Well, thanks for joining us for our CAD user group meeting. Let's see, we actually have a decent showing in person. So I thought maybe because it was only going to be half a day, we'd go down a little bit, but you guys are dedicated. I like to see you guys. All right. So a couple things before we get started is just a general note that the CPDs are only going to be sent out to the in-person attendees. So if you did come in person, just make sure you sign in at that desk out front. That way you'll get the email with their certificate. The online attendees, you guys shouldn't even be able to unmute, but just if for some reason I forgot to do that setting, mute yourself and then use the chat if you want to ask questions. And then I will get this recording posted up on our wiki page. There's a link. It's on the agenda. I think I plastered it everywhere, so you can watch the recording afterwards and ignore that date at the bottom of the slides. Let's just be those two. I thought I fixed them all. So today we're going to go over just some general updates, workspace updates, some stuff on what's new in ORD 2026. We're going to do a presentation on feature services and map services, and kind of showing what we set up. I'm going to go over survey certification process. That's a new process. We're going to take a little networking break, and then we're going to do Earthwork demo with a ditch undercut example added in there, which I think is going to be really good. And then we'll end with you guys voting for our ideas on the ideas portal. So before we get into anything, I did want to introduce, we do have 2 new employees in our office. So David is right there in the front. So David joins us. He has a background on the bridge side, came from consultant side. How many years you got? I forget. 25 years. And then we also have Vikram, which is over there in the back, that's joining us. So they've been here, what, like about 2 months now? About 2 months. They started the same week. So I'm sure you guys will start seeing their names come through as you reach out to us or we do different things. So we are happy to have them. So hopefully fill some voids that we had. Before I get into the next topic, Matt, did you want to come up and announce the programmatic real quick?
Like everything we do, it's always last minute. Forgot to include it on a slide, and also was last minute on getting it on the programmatic. We did add a couple weeks ago. We added a programmatic project for a task order project to help support our office. It's a 2-year task order. It'll be on the September 8th programmatic, just to help us with a lot of the digital delivery efforts. It could be anything from model development support, helping us with L&D standards to support digital delivery, helping us with workspace development type standards, anything related to that. Well, we have a little bit of a better description online. I can't remember some of the other things that we kind of included there. If you're interested in that, we can talk later. I'm going to be the PM on that, so we can chat more if you want to talk to it, or ping me today or give me a call or an email, and we can talk sometime later this week or next week before the 8th. So that was it. Thanks.
All right. So I kind of already spoiled it by having the slide up here, but I want to go over our testing with ORD 26. So we are right now, we're not going to move to it because of one pretty decent problem. But before I go over all the negatives, I figured I would put in a positive. So one of the reasons we didn't go to 25 is like the report with the item types. If you did selection set, it wasn't working. That's working now. So thought I'd mention that. But the main reason is with masked text, which is already a pet peeve of Matt, as he thinks we should remove it in general from our workspace. But if you're using masked text, it will print black. There's really no way around it. I'll show a picture on the next slide, but the text editor part was only a problem in ORD. It was only a problem in MicroStation. It wasn't, but it is fixed already in MicroStation. The release that just came out, and we're hopeful that the next update of 26 will have it fixed. So what I'm talking about is this. So on the left, there is a screenshot from ORD. So if you open up the text editor and you're using a mask text text style where the background is set, you can't even see what you typed because it's all black. And that is the problem in both ORD and MicroStation. Again, they fixed it in MicroStation, this very latest release that just came out. But then an additional problem on the ORD side is when you actually go to print. If you can see from the print preview, all those boxes and text are printing in black. And there really was no way around it. The only way around it is to just not use it. So if you had shapes that were using that as a fill color, it would also print black. So the text editor part is fixed in the new latest version of MicroStation. We're hoping that that will get included in OpenRose Designer, and we're hoping that they also will fix the print issue. But we figured that that was going to be a pretty bad problem for people, because I don't think you're going to find a plan that's not using masked text, other than the ones Matt did. But so unfortunately, that we got pretty far through our testing, and we found that, and we were like, dang it. So that was a big enough one to say, no, we're going to have to wait. That's going to cause too many headaches. So if you don't care about printing, if we were just at digital delivery, we wouldn't have this problem. We're not there yet. Another problem, this one was more of a nuance, but let's play this video and you guys can see. So what changed here is when you're in the template editor, if you don't put a name in the point name box, it will not create a point, or it won't create it. So you can see in this video, I'm going to go through a whole bunch of different examples, but when you're placing a simple component, I don't know if you saw at the beginning, it just wouldn't move on my cursor. It was like stuck, frozen. And then when I added a point name, it then moved with me. And then there's me, or this is technically Matt's video, but just trying to draw an unconstrained, you saw I clicked all the points, and when I finished, it disappeared. So it took a second to realize what was going on, but this wasn't a problem in previous versions. So you have to make sure you fill out that point name. If you leave it blank, it just messes up. So I'm going through like just a bunch of different examples of what happens. So here's drawing one with the name. It came in just fine. If I do it without the name, I just try to do a null point. You can click, it just goes away. It's not there. It fails. Add a point name in there. There it works again. The one I found really interesting was when you draw a component and snapping to existing points, which I'll show here in a second. I thought that was very interesting. So if I come here without a point name and I snap to an existing component here, I'm going to draw, I'm going to click a point, I'm going to finish. And it draws it, but there's no point in the one corner. It's just not there. So I would like to say this is a bug. I don't know if they're going to address it or not. You just have to make sure you fill in that value, whereas before you didn't. So here's an example when I put in a value, it actually works now. So I don't know if anyone's tested 26, but when we got into here, we were puzzled for a little bit until we realized that it was that, because we were like, oh, this is going to be real bad if this is not working. So I don't know why they changed something, because before it would just fill out if it was blank. So I think that's enough example. I think it restarted there. So there's plenty of just options or examples of showing what goes wrong. So if you guys are by chance using 26 and you're in the template editor and it's going weird, it's probably that. So, another one we found was specific to drainage because you can never leave drainage off this list, right? I did say they did fix the report, and that was directly related to drainage. But so in Civil Labeler, if you're going to try to label a conduit using that, if you're directly in the file that contains the conduit, the rotation works. So you see on my left side here, I'm directly in a file that contains that. I go and I click on my conduit line, and it rotates the annotation nicely along it. But if I'm across a reference, which we most likely will be, rotation just stops working. So you can see in the screenshot with the box, it just doesn't rotate it. So that's a defect filed. I don't know when they're going to fix it, but just noting that it was weird because if you use this Civil Labeler on just a linear feature, the rotation works just fine. So it was just conduit features that it broke on. Some other things, importing points from GPK, you can import them, but if you go and change your coordinate system, it won't move those points. It'll move like everything else. So don't do that. Right now, that reprojection actually works in the very latest release that just came out of MicroStation. So I'm assuming in the update that's going to come out for ORD, they will fix that problem. Another one, this one's more of just a display problem in 26. And actually, I didn't even notice it, but in 25, because we had stopped our testing in 25 after we found some problems. So I wish I would have found it because I would have submitted it earlier. But it displays the item types twice in the element properties window. It's still one instance of the item type. It's just a display problem. So it's not like anything's wrong. It's just showing up twice. You can click on one and click on the other one. You'll see it's the same exact instance. So that's just a display problem. They haven't given me a target fix for that. I'm not so concerned about this one. It just kind of is annoying when you look at your properties and you see it there twice. Another one that isn't that big of a deal is I'm going to go over this a little bit later, or with our feature services that they added. For some reason, it just doesn't include all of the features on certain services. So like here's an example of our geohazards, and it's only showing us 3 out of the, I don't know, 10, 9, I guess, yeah, 10. It only showed up 3. So that's a defect submitted with them. Hopefully they'll address that, but most of the feature services still show up, but that was one thing we found. So if you guys have your, like, trying to connect to other feature services outside OhioDOT, the TIMS, I didn't see any problems with the TIMS service if you guys are trying to connect to those, but it is a pretty cool feature they added to be able to directly connect to these ArcGIS, I guess, feature classes and be able to pull them directly in. So I'm going to show that what we set up in a little bit. So that is what I had for the updates in what we did with our testing for 26. I don't know, did anyone do their own testing of already 26 in this room? So not like you have to. I was just curious if you guys had found anything. But so for now, we're going to hold off, hopeful for this update that's going to come out that we can move to there. We had an original goal of moving to 26 by end of the year. So this kind of is ruining that. Partly we're internally wanting to really stop the use of Geopack, and this version had some of the missing pieces for importing the different things out of the GPK that we requested a while back. So that this version kind of opens the doors to say, okay, we no longer really have those dependencies on Geopack. We can get the stuff out of the GPK that we couldn't before. But if we don't move to it, we can't start moving out of Geopack. So, but if you're online listening internal, hopefully I didn't scare you off. Hopefully that isn't new news to you guys. We do plan on having a couple computers that you can remote into for a little bit, but the goal is to pull it off everyone's machines once we get to 26. But I check every week on our usage, and we're like, under 8 users every week over week on Geopack users. So we're pretty light internally on it. Our goal is to try to get completely off of it before it breaks one day. So with that, I will kick it over to Josh. He's going to go over some what's new in 26. Waiting back there. And I got bad news for you. It won't let me share audio.
No audio.
No. So you're gonna have to talk over the videos.
So
You got this, right?
I'll read
Alright.
the subtitles. All right. What's new, everyone? So a few really cool things with ORD and everything related in 2026. Prompt engineers rejoice. You'll be getting to have Copilot directly inside of Open Roads Designer here soon, and hopefully any and all bugs that you've encountered are gone, and you'll have some new ones to deal with. So one big note that they made right at the top was that the view set tools are now what they call native code, replacing some VBA macros. So this ideally will result in more stability and consistency while you're kind of working on your projects while maintaining the same functionality that you're used to. So hopefully less lag. And then this one is pretty interesting. It has to do with kind of maintaining the health of your design files throughout the design process. They call it the Civil DGN checker. So it is supposed to proactively detect any kind of civil specific data issues that you might encounter in your file that would lead to any kind of sync failures or issues with an iModel later down the road in your design process. So here is just a quick video with absolutely no volume. Go. They're not playing. Let me try one more. Interesting. We did it last year. Sweet. Yeah, that must have been it. All right.
I have to reshare though.
Yeah.
Click it's still sharing. Okay, you're good.
All right, take two. There we go. That looks a bit more promising. All right, so pretty much this is just a little application in the backstage. Next update, go and click on it, and it's a brand new window that pops up that ideally you can go ahead and just kind of click a few buttons and it will flag any kind of issues that you might encounter down the road with any of your files. And then lastly, after running the app, you can actually export pretty much like a little CSV file. So ideally, this will help streamline submitting issues to Bentley. They'll have a really nice clean file to help them figure out what went wrong. Then next up, just to note, they have pretty much, you can bring in terrain from what they call the CCM World Terrain Tool. So this is pretty much just a built-in way that you can bring it in and the terrain is available around the world. And this does not require any extra licensing, or you don't have to pay any extra for this. And then this is just a quick demo of their workflow, just pressing the button here, and it gives a little pop-up where they're going to go ahead and select some terrain they want to bring in within their boundary. And there it is. So pretty much, yep, nice and built in. You can make your own terrain models that way using CCM now. And then one note kind of for drainage, they have something called the override inlet capture for pipe hydraulics. So this is pretty much a way to, let's see here, pretty much toggle between what they call a full capture mode for your pipe sizing and then an actual inlet capacity mode. So pretty much this will allow you to decide if you want it to automatically make certain selections for you or not. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this one on. So this is just a quick video showing they're going to run through a couple steps here, and you'll be able to see in their Explorer a few options that they have to choose from when it comes to overriding certain features. Then next up, just a quick kind of annotation update. They have a bulk borehole annotation now for open grounds. So pretty much your classic element annotation tool will end up just annotating all this for you. So there it is. If you ever really wanted to annotate boreholes, now you can. And then now for anyone that knows a lot about this, they have done some UDX enhancements with some smarter formulas. So pretty much what they did, and one big part of this was for a lot of these formulas, it could only return a numerical value. So you're only going to get a 1 or a 0. So now you can actually insert like text to have readable results for some of your formulas when you're doing work. So like for this example here, if you have a formula for if something passes or fails, you can actually put the word pass or fail in. So here's just an example of that formula window that they've went ahead and opened up to show their formulas. So now you can include any kind of text you want, and it'll actually show up in your result. So catching up to Excel. Then next update, pretty much for cross sections. If you have a bunch of cross sections with kind of different sizes to them, they can all be on the same exact feature definition now. So this is just a quick demo. You can kind of see off to the right that they have pretty much some of their, let's call it a corridor. And they're going to end up having some different sizes for it as they continue, and it's all going to be on the same feature definition, and they're not going to have to change it. So there you go. You can kind of see that they updated their size and the channel changed, but it's all still on the same feature definition. So just a quality of life change for that workflow. Next up is something called the regression points table. So this pretty much lets you make changes and take a look at any of your regression data in pretty much, tabular view. And this will allow you to more easily kind of update weights, any kind of statuses that pertain to the project, and your offsets for each and every individual point. So this is just a quick demo of them opening up the window. So it's simply one button called the regression points table, and it pops up and automatically populates all of your points. So for anyone that has desperately wanted to see your regression points all in one place, now you can. And then last but not least, we have the Bentley Copilot tech preview that they love to show off. So here's a quick video of someone talking to a chatbot inside of Open Roads Designer, asking them, how do I do my job? So this is pretty much, it's not built in automatically to Open Roads Designer, and make sure your agency or company wants it in there. But there could be actually some use cases. You can upload all of your company's standards and anything that you would want your employees to have access to reference and maybe ask questions about like actually like certain standards. So, but apparently you can still ask it like, hey, please build my corridor. And then maybe after 20 prompts, it'll have something for you. Yeah, so there you go. They asked, how can I add retaining walls to my design? So, maybe just being able to ask some questions like that. All right, and then next up, we're just going to jump into talking about a few of our workspace updates here at ODOT. So for some of our apps and add-ins, we updated our GINT summary converter to fix CSV parsing and any project-wise copy-out issues. And then we updated our sheet cells add-in to ensure that something called the shared cell toggle is off. Another update was we updated our design files list, CSV, with some new VC and VK files and naming corrections. And we ended up removing the word civil from several file titles. We corrected a few typos in our roadway sheets and the GI comment. And then we added a sorting method to Sheet Manager that has a new folder and file tree to it. Then next up
Josh, can I jump in real fast?
Yes.
Can you go back to that? The idea behind the VK file was a lot of times when the surveyor develops the existing right-of-way or the existing or not right-of-way, the existing alignments, the geometry, as a designer, we would need to add a profile to that. And there was always a conflict of who owns that file. So the idea here is that the surveyor developing that alignment from however they're going to develop it, from plans or from monumentation, can deliver that VK file, and they're going to be the owner of that file, and they can put it in their survey base maps folder. And then as a designer, then you can take that VK file and copy it over to create your BK, and then you can do whatever you need. Now you become the owner of that, and then you can add your proposed profile for whatever work you might be doing from there. It's kind of it goes along with what JD is going to talk about later with the survey certification and who has ownership of what's being delivered and when and where. Also was helping, well, we also were having duplicate file names in different folders, which was causing issues in some cases too. So hopefully that helps.
Thanks, Matt. Ivan. Then next up for our Workspace Updates, Crash Draw 2.0 was released for traffic and safety groups. This is just a collision diagram building application. A few experimental, more efficient modes were added for users to use when building collision diagrams, as well as lots of quality of life enhancements. A few more updates with our apps and add-ins. We removed the ProjectWise SQL API usage from our Sheet Manager app. We updated our SCD list text with the most up-to-date dates. We updated our signature sheet cell names, and we updated the Create Design Files sheet cells, as well as Sheet Manager and the GINT Summary Converter documentation files. So all the documentation on those apps have been updated.
Quick note there. The reason the SQL usage was removed was mainly for if you're going to move to ProjectWise Cloud. Bentley guys do not want anyone using SQL in the APIs anymore, so they're turning it off, which is going to wreak havoc on anyone that did any custom programming because the SQL is lightning fast. So you're going to notice some slowdowns specifically in that app. But if you guys are on cloud already, some of the other apps might not work with the ProjectWise integration because I've not gone through all the apps and make sure that I've stopped using SQL API calls. So just kind of a note on that. I don't know if any, that came from someone that had already moved to it. So we have not moved to it internally. So when that happens, you can be assured that at that point, the workspace would definitely be updated to go through all those apps. But just kind of note if you guys are using ProjectWise and you did get upgraded or moved to cloud, there is this, you can request that setting to be turned back on, but eventually they are going to disable it. So Brandon, I don't know if you have anything else to add on that. He thinks November was the date where they're going to turn off that functionality. So you got a couple more months if you are on it to request it to be turned back on. But yeah, I wish they would. They don't want people to use it for injecting stuff because it was causing problems. But I was only using it to read, and I was hoping that they would leave the read functionality on, but they're just turning it all off. And so I'm sure they've heard that from everyone that it's going to be a lot slower to do a lot of queries. But with that, we'll move on.
So we've got a few new survey files in our workspace. We added the survey certification table template, and we also added the VC sheet folders to both workset templates and our 300 survey and sub template survey folders. Then a few quick updates with some cells and sheets. We renamed a few things, our border, interior title, and interior signature models for a little more clarity. We also removed some deprecated models, kind of some older sizings that we don't use anymore. We updated the OUPS logo and integrated into our, let's see here. Yeah, so we removed that logo, or no, we updated it and then put it into our interior title models, and then adjusted our placement permissions. Pretty much we had some models set to not be able to place a few things, and then we revised our interior title logo and prepared by location, as well as a small revision to what we call the Title 1 note cell. Couple config updates. We added a new workspace/workset feature service and map service config variables, and we added a Tim's service XML file with definitions inside of it, the kind of Amos server list, and then the feature service server list XML files. Inside, here's an image pretty much set to your server or favorite, set to false, and then your server names, etc. Few GUI and DGN library updates. We updated the drainage coordinate units to US survey feet. We added something called MDX mesh feature definition and templates. We updated annotation groups, pretty much for like readability, and then things such as right-of-way, guardrail and barrier, naming, alignments, and then we updated utility and quality level annotation groups and their filters. And then we added a new traffic arrow item type library for crash draw. We also added a survey certification table seed to what we call the OhioDOT table seeds DGN library. And then a few general summary and Excel resources. We updated the drainage coordinate units to US survey feet and added the MDX mesh feature definition. So we updated a few GenSum Excel files to use Calibri font. We updated pretty much what we call our GenSum sheet to use italic font and refreshed the item master. And we removed something called the speed up general summary template. Then for our note files and general notes, we made quite a few updates for the latest revisions and typos across pretty much every single respective section. And then we also ended up removing something called the school area traffic control and bicycle facility notes. Those are not used anymore.
That has a note there, January of 26. Vikram just made a really good effort to go through and get it all updated for the July updates as well. So those should be out there too.
Right. Then in our workspace, our training documentation has been overhauled and updated to be a bit more thorough and cohesive to run through. And then for plotting and pen tables, we updated our pen tables for kind of improved border text handling and better colors for color overrides. And then we updated the sheet size definitions, such as pretty much our new portrait and landscape naming, and then added, we call it 22 by 17 and 17 by 22 sizes, as well as updating our OhioDOT seed print set file with a folder rename and reordering. Couple template updates. We updated the OhioDOT templates, ITL, active template. We updated our title, MVBA, background image. We fixed a survey MVBA bug related to locked textiles. We added the crash draw seed file and added the arrows cells list cell library for crash draw usage. And then with that, next up is talking a little more about some feature and raster services.
All right, thanks, Josh. So I don't know if anyone had a chance to play around with any of these. This is newer to ORD, these raster and feature services. So in ORD, if you go to the geospatial context workflow, the little drop down, in there you'll see there's a section for feature services, and there's a bunch of buttons for raster services. So I'm going to go over both of them and then show what we set up in a couple of notes. I went through and added basically all the services that are in TIMS. I've added all those feature classes. So they're in our workspace now. So you'll see in a couple slides that they'll be in the drop down to make it easier to connect to that data. So for raster services, it's all connections are set up through this .xamis file. So when you go to like connect to raster service, it's going to create this file and you're going to attach that file. So you can still see all the attribute data if there were like feature info on that feature class, you would be able to see that still. So I'm going to show that. On a note on this front, we've gotten several tickets about the WMS service from OGRIP that just stopped working about a month and a half ago, maybe 2 months now. So I don't know if anyone is using the WMS service, so that like most current service, what most people connect to stream in OGRIP imagery. That's been down for a while. We did reach out to them. I don't think we ever heard anything. Something broke along the lines. I thought it would be fixed, but we can that service, the OGRIP, you can also connect to it through this raster streaming. So I personally think this raster service is a better workflow than the WMS server anyways. So if you guys are running into that, my recommendation is to just stop using the WMS service and switch over to this. So I'm about to show you this. I think it's better. So what we're going to do is play this video. And so I have already open. I'm going to click this. I'm going to make sure I'm in the geospatial context workflow. And I'm going to just click this new ArcGIS under the raster services tab. And so what I've done already is in that services button, I've set up a list of all the services. So TIMS has a lot of raster services out there. So do we need all these? Probably not. But while I was at it, I was like, I might as well just include them all. So sorry if it's a little over the top. But the first one is actually going to be from the OGRIP. So it's not just all TIMS stuff. So I have that OGRIP server in there. And so when you click on that, it'll kind of pull up the feature classes. You see it says OSIP most current. And then there's a save and attach. So this is that file it's going to create. So it's going to generate that file. By default, it's going to just pull your active DGN file location. So you can save it wherever you wish. Give it a better name than the file name. So I hit save and attach, so it will save it and then also attach. But you could just save it and then attach it manually. So you get this dialog comes up just like any other raster you add. And there is that raster reference there. And you can see as I zoom in and out, it's still quite fast. So I know with the WMS, we had like tiled them down. You would pick the individual count. There was a lot of files to choose from. I don't think we need to worry about that anymore. I mean, I tested it out. It looked like it was going pretty good. So I'm going to go add another one. So here I'm going to select an asset type in TIMS, the borehole locations. I could pick any of them, but this one is on, keep in mind, this is on the raster side. I'm going to show this again on the feature side here in a second. So I'm just going to add that attachment. I'm going to turn this other one off. And then I'm going to go zoom in on an area here. You can see all those kind of point locations coming in. I can click that feature info button and I can click on that and I can see that information on what I have selected on that feature instance. So just noting there, you can still get to that metadata, but it is a reference, right? It's like a connection over to that service. So it should stay, up to date. Now switching over to feature services, unlike the map services, this will actually bring in the features as dgen elements into your file. So it's not creating like a reference and attachment kind of thing. You're connecting to it and you're going to pull those in as elements. All right. So I've also went through and added all the Tim's feature services to the connections. I do want to note though, right now our Tim's is primarily set up for the raster services. There's not many layers that have the feature services turned on. And so that is just an additional setting on the server. So I did talk to our GIS guys about it. They asked which all ones we would want feature services turned on for. And I said, I don't know yet because there's a lot there. So the roadway one was already on. That's one of the biggest ones I was looking at for the inventory one, but still kind of looking at the use cases here. I'm not just going to have them go turn it on for everyone if there's no reason to. So if you guys do find yourself using it and you want one of those turned on, just send me an email. On one version, I was still able to connect to the raster services through the feature service dialog. And then on the latest one, it didn't work. So probably wasn't supposed to be able to, but maybe you can get lucky. I didn't go through like a bunch of them, but just want to note that. So in this case, instead of creating a file and attaching it, you're going to connect to a service and then you're going to query that data in. So I'm going to say it on this slide and in the video, do not query in the whole entire data source or the connection. Like you will crash already, I promise you, because I did it. Like if you try to connect to the roadway services and you just say bring in all of it for the whole state, it just freezes. I wasn't gonna wait however long. Just don't do it. Promise you, you're gonna regret it. So here's a quick video. So I'm going over that geospatial workflow. And this I'm going to click on new under the feature services section. And then in here, I'm going to hit that services button. And if this list isn't set up, you can also, if you have the URL, you can just paste it in there. This is just to make it easy so you don't have to remember. So there's not that many there compared to the raster services. So I'm going to click the roadway one. You can change the name, but it'll show you the features that it finds in that service, and then you can check them on and off. So now I have created a connection. I haven't brought anything in yet. I've just created a connection. You can go back and edit that if you need to, but when you create that, you can delete it, which I just deleted it just to show you. There's no like, are you sure? You hit that button, it's just gone. So go add it right back. But one thing I wanted to mention that when it does create that connection, it's actually creating an item type library with the item type in it with all of the properties that go with those feature classes. So I guess I'm showing query features. I'm sure I'm going to X that out here in a second and show the item types, but there are different options to query, and which I'll go over here in a second. But it also will create element templates for each feature class. So you can control the symbology through that. So I'm going to go and I'm going to open up my element templates here. and I'm going to see that they created this folder automatically on that connection, and there's that feature class. It has the item type that it created, added to the item to the element template. So here's the item types that added. You can see there's all those properties. So this just matches up with the metadata of that connection that you made, and then it says use that over in your element template, and then you can like change the level, which I recommend doing because in our workspace we don't allow creating new levels, so it probably won't work for you if you try to tell it to use a different level. So a little bit of nuanced workflow right now. I don't know if I have a better way to handle this, but you're going to want to go here and fix that level, or when you go to query, you're probably going to get some kind of error because it couldn't create that level. So there's spatial area, went right past it really quickly. Let me jump back real quick. So in the drop down, you can do active view, you can do by fence, you can do by name boundary, or you can do all. So do not do all. Or if you want to watch already spin and crap, I mean, maybe if it's a very small one, you could probably get away with it. Like if it's a smaller feature class of elements. So I think typically people are probably going to use active view. Just use your active view. And then when you hit query, it will then, that is at that point, it will query in the features that you had selected on. And so in this case, I should see, I guess I need to jump back forward. Let me go back. That's the problem with jumping around. Should be right about here. Query features. I'm just going to hit OK, and you'll see it adds that line. So that is an element. Now it is a controlled element, so you can't just you can't click on it and delete it. It won't let you. You can try all you want. The only way to delete it is through the tool bar, which I'll show. But I'm clicking on it. You can see all these properties. So here's where I think could be really beneficial if you wanted to quickly get roadway data. If you already had some stuff set up, you're in your file, you could query this in and quickly find different things about that area that you're working on for existing data. So I thought that was pretty cool. I'm going to add another one here. So geotech, the borehole locations. So just same one I did as a raster. I'm also going to stream it as a feature here. So going in here and I'm just fixing that level again. And so I'm picking a level there, and I'm going to go into the point settings here since I know these are points. I'm going to say, hey, I want you to place a cell. I'm just going to choose the benchmark for this example, but I can have it come in on a cell during the query. But there's a slight bug right now, which I have submitted to Bentley, which we'll see here in a second. So I'm going to turn off that raster reference I had in there so we don't see the borehole from that one. And now I'm going to query in, and you can see this is the bug. It did not use my cell. It just kind of came in on some weird looking like circle thing. So it was supposed to use my cell that I set, but it didn't. If I go back to my element template and I toggle that to a different cell and toggle it back, it will then use the cell. So on initial query, for some reason, it doesn't want to use it. So I submit that to Bentley. There, now it actually has my cell. The other problem right now is that these feature services are queried in and they don't honor annotation scale. So what that means, if you wanted to clear the features, you can't delete it like I mentioned earlier. There's clear tools and you can clear all. There's like clear specific ones. But just noting that you cannot delete it. Like here, I'll try to delete it. I hit the X button. It's controlled through your connection. So if I use the clear button, then I can get rid of them that way. So just note when you're dealing with this and you're like, why won't it delete? That's why it's controlled. So The other problem I was mentioning is that is not honoring the annotation cell. So that cell was made to be annotation aware, right? Can be placed as annotation cell, was checked on. But when you're using these feature services, as you zoom in and out, it's just making it bigger for your view. So to me, that was very GIS. People must have been involved. So I submitted a ticket trying to get it more as a defect, and they said no, submit an idea. So here's an idea, which I think I have later on. So don't worry, I'll get that link up there for you guys to vote for, because I think that'd be really good if we could get them to honor that annotation scale. That example with the boreholes would be pretty useful. You could just bring them in, but I'm sure there's going to be other use cases. So I don't know if somebody wants to throw that in the chat for everyone online. It's already in there. So cool. So there's that. Now that I got that as an idea submitted, but then the whole cell not coming in on the right cell in the beginning. I'm waiting on a defect to be created for that. So hopefully they do that like today. The other note, if you guys start using this on your side in your organization, the variables are defined by default at the system level, which I also submitted a ticket to Bentley and saying, like, don't do this, because it took me a while to figure out. I kept getting this error in the message saying error while loading feature service list. And that's all it would say. And I'm like, I know it's valid. I added it myself. Well, it turns out the error was really at the organization level, which I wasn't looking at. So you can set this feature service list and raster service list at the organization config level, the work set config level, and the workspace config level, right? So all three of those are set in system first. And they're all set to a data folder. So it pretty much uses like organization, location, data, and then a file name. So if the file doesn't exist, when you open the dialog, it tries to auto create that file. And so I'm assuming Bentley always had access to auto create the file. So they never ran into this error, but you guys most likely will, because as end users, you typically won't have edit access to organization level, right? Hopefully not the workspace level either. So when you're in our data source, I've defined the workspace and work set to be actual locations that exist so that we won't see that error. And then in our data source, I've also defined the organization level so that we don't see the stupid error. But on your guys' side, you might want to get with your CAD manager, you start using this and you're seeing this message, because if it can't create that location, then you're going to see this error message every single time you get into the dialog, which is annoying, but you can ignore it. It's just annoying that it's there. And the message detail doesn't really say that much. Doesn't tell you what level or anything. So I was a little bit annoyed. I didn't get the response I wanted from Bentley, like, hey, you realize that users aren't going to have access to this. Even if you do have access, if the folder doesn't exist, it won't create the folder. It'll only create the file. So if you don't have a data folder, you're also going to see the error even if you had added access. So not the way I would want them to implement, but it's a minor thing at the end of the day. So you got to choose your battles, right? So my recommendation is to make sure you have a data folder and the default file name at organization level. If you guys are the CAD managers, just so you don't see the stupid error. So other than that, you can ignore the error. So there's a CAD manager action and what I did. So I don't have control over your guys' organization level in your company, so I can't solve that problem, nor do I want to. You can just create a blank XML file. The file is just XML file that lists all the things in that server dialog. So, and there's I did submit a case, but was met with submit an idea, which I did not submit an idea to, again, pick your battles. So if you guys want to submit an idea, I'll vote for it. But, all right, any questions on that? It's a newer. It's kind of been in the software for a little bit, but we never really talked about it or looked at it until now. So I could see some benefits coming, some use cases, but just kind of scratching the surface on it. So if you guys start using it and have suggestions or things, feel free to shoot them my way. If there's no questions, any questions in the chat? Okay. I can pull the questions up.
So Brian asked, are the URL links live? That was back at the beginning when you started.
The raster
I
connection.
think so.
Yeah, it's similar to a WMS stream, so it's like a raster connection to wherever you are. So if it's to the
I
Tim's,
think it was when you were talking about the Tim stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. So it's not an element, it's a reference. It's going to
But-
refresh. Yeah.
He said in the borehole data table just now.
Yeah,
So-
so on the raster side, yeah, on the feature side, I have to look into exactly how that gets updated. I know it's a connection. I don't know if you have to requery to get the updates or not. I will have to figure out how to even test. Maybe I'll look at the documentation. So on the feature service side, I'm not exactly sure. I know it's a connection. I know you can requery. I don't know if it updates on load or not. I'll have to look into that side.
Brian, you know where to find JD.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
Alyssa asked, for the raster service from OSIP, does it matter what GCS you are in? Will this update if you swap to a different GCS or have to reproject?
So it doesn't matter what GCS you're in, but you do have to have a coordinate system defined or won't know how to reproject it. All right. But no, it does not matter what. It will reproject it on the fly. But if you don't have a coordinate system set, then it's not going to reproject it, and it's probably going to be in the wrong spot. So no.
She gave you a thumbs up. I think you answered
Okay.
the question.
I like to repeat myself twice. I feel like a lot of times people aren't listening, and then I say it again, they're like, "Oh yeah." So I know that's how I am a lot when I'm on the other side. I'm like, "What did he just say?" All right, that sounded important. Any other ones? Are we good?
No, that looks like that's it.
All right, so next thing I want to go over was survey certification. So we'll just get into it. Let me get back to focus. So we have implemented a surveyor certification process. And so the surveyors have been notified. You guys have probably heard about it. I'm pretty sure something went out with consultant services too. At least it was supposed to. Basically, what happened was the state board told us that we are not compliant. So this is particularly plans that don't have right of way. So we're not really getting a surveyor certification in our plan set. But there's still survey related things in our plan that we should have a surveyor signing off on. So we had to come up with a process to make sure that we were getting that signature. So surveyors work, always do our work kind of before the plan's even really made. So we can't really just put the surveyor signature on the title sheet because you have to get them to recertify it, like 4 years after they did their work. So that really wasn't going to work. So what we did is we ended up moving all that stuff to a separate PDF so they could sign it, and you could still create the plan set and not have to worry about recertifying the survey part of it. So we've always had signatures on the individual reports, but there's never been the signature in the plan set, which is where the problem is right now. So just kind of noting it because that was one thing that came up, like, well, we sign all this stuff, and yes, you do. So let's go over kind of what we're going to do here. So kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier with the workspace updates. So basically, we're pulling the survey stuff to a separate PDF, kind of like we did when we implemented digital signatures. We pulled right away to a separate PDF. We pulled like the signatures we didn't care about to another PDF. We're going to do the same thing here. So with that, it means there's a new file, VC. So survey certification would be it'd be a sheet inside the sheet folder, which is why we added a sheets folder to the survey. If you're in our data source, we bulk went through and just added the sheets folder. But if you're not in our data source, that's something to be aware of, that you might need to add that sheets folder to a project. So especially if you're trying to use the Create Design Files app, it's going to try to go there and it's going to say, hey, this folder doesn't exist. I can't create it. So we added those two things for that reason. You should see them in Create Design Files. So there's a new table now, which Josh mentioned. And then we also added it as a table seed inside ORD. So if you didn't want to use Excel, there's also a table seed, but I would envision most people are going to gravitate towards the Excel side. And so this table is going to be used to list the deliverables that the surveyor would be signing off on. So things like the survey master, the fieldbook files, so that alignment file, so their alignment file, their VK file is what they'll be signing off on. Hence the reason why we have VK and BK now. So again, the surveyor is going to do VK, and that will be in the surveyor folder, base maps. And then if the engineer needs to like do a proposed profile work or something, they'd copy that and rename it to BK and take ownership of that and add their stuff. Now, I get that does cause a disconnect if the surveyor does go back and update something with alignment. I understand that. I don't have a good solution other than communication. Hopefully it doesn't bite us, but there's really no way to sign off on that file and make sure that it didn't also get changed. So that's kind of the workflow for alignments. That's kind of part of the reason why it came into play here. So on this surveyor sheet, this VC sheet, we're going to have that table listing the deliverables. We're moving that GO105 note. So if it has a GO105 note, we're moving it over to here. And then the monument table also would be moved into this file. So basically the surveyor related stuff that they need to sign off on is moving there. So granted, if you got like a resurfacing project, doing survey work, having a GO105 note, you don't need this file. But when the surveyors are part of the project doing work, we need to make sure that they're signing something that's getting included into the plan set. So it doesn't mean that there can just be just one. You could have multiple sheets, depending on how big the project is, how many surveyors are involved. You could put multiple stamps if they want to like separate their work a little easier. So I would envision most of the time you're going to have one sheet of this, but just kind of noting it. So with that, L&D Volume 3 has been updated to include these things. I don't know if anyone was looking through the updates, but we did include this stuff. So mainly over in the 1600 section where I go over the plan set components. This is another component in there, right? So if anyone remembers that section, you got like your main plan, your right-of-way is another one, your signatures, the non-PE signatures. We just recently added the proposal notes need to go in there now, proposal notes. And then now there's this survey certification PDF. So that section will outline all the components that should be going into your plan set. And again, they're really separated primarily just for digital signatures. It's still considered one complete plan set. So you package all that up into a PDF package or PDF portfolio, depending on if you're using Adobe or Bluebeam. Those are two different names for the same thing. And then L&D Volume 4 has been updated for this as well. And you'll see in the appendix, there's an example of this for reference. So there is the example sheet. You can see there's here, this is the table. It's kind of hard to see. Should have zoomed in. But you're going to sign it the same way you sign a title sheet. You can use that app that we have to place it, to create that digital signature field. So you can just click on it and sign it. There's G105 notes over here. You got some points table here. And this table right here is set up so it's kind of got some default sections in there, like horizontal control, like mapping stuff. And right now we're just listing the file name and revision date. I realize that doesn't mean the file can't change. Like, I realize that. So right now that's what we're doing. Might come up with something better, but for now, if you're inside project wise, creating a version of that file would be one thing I'd recommend. So you would have that. You toyed around with setting it to final status too. Make sure no one's changing the file, but I'm a little worried about changes needing to happen and then contacting admin to undo that and then recertify. So that's where we're at right now. The main goal is to make sure that we are getting the surveyors signing off on the plans that they're involved in. And so the idea here is that when they're done with their work, they can sign it. You just need to remember to include it. It's going to be the biggest part that I'm worried about. You make sure you include this in your plan set, because it could be years after they've finished it, right? So again, it kind of came from the board, so I would envision we're going to see this happening to more people, more agencies, more states, but something that we needed to handle. So I'm afraid to ask, are there questions on this? Awesome. Crystal clear to everyone. Oh, yes.
Run this
Here,
over to-
yeah. Sorry.
Dave, run this over to him.
Everyone online is probably like, what's he saying? Good call, Matt.
If you are a consultant and you have a sub-consultant doing the survey, you will need to keep on top of this so that, because you're hiring XYZ surveying to do your work. Sometimes a surveyor that works at XYZ goes off and works somewhere else. So who is going to sign off on this? Who is going to take legal responsibility for this? Sometimes you can get XYZ surveying company to sign off on it, but you want to sign off on this as the work is being completed. It's not something, well, let's do it at the end. No, do it while it is going on.
Yep, that is a great comment, right? You do want to make sure that surveyors are signing off quickly so that you can make sure they don't leave the company, because that was also when same thing kind of came up when we had digital signatures on the engineering side too. Like, what happens if this guy left, which could happen, right? It's a hard thing to do, right? Are you going to review all the work and take ownership? Like, if you can't get that signature. So as a valid point, staying up on it is going to be the best thing you can do. One thing to note is that this is not going back, right? It's basically new survey services moving forward, right? So if they did the survey work before the last update, then they're kind of grandfathered in. So we're not trying to go back in time. We're just saying, okay, we hear you. We implemented a fix. We're going to start doing this fix. Is the route. So if they've already done their survey work, like, you don't need to go back. It's just more of a moving forward thing. So, but that's where we're at. Yes. Oh, Dave. You got a question, Dave.
Often we'll receive alignments in like a right-of-way based map. not the survey based map or VK type files? What is that best practice? Should there be any alignments in there? Like I think sometimes they like to put them in there so they can build their right of way features with like offsets from alignments, which maybe don't work as well when the alignments are in a VK versus the BR. Like I don't know, any opinions on best practices for those?
Ideally, like the center line alignments we want in the VK file. I guess if they're alignment feature types can be in the right away, right? They're laying out parcels and stuff. But the actual center line we would want in the VK file.
Okay, thanks.
Right, one more over there.
I'd imagine, Joe, that workflow is going to have to vary project by project and stuff like that too.
Is this something we need to get resubmitted every stage of design? No.
No, I would say it's something when they're done, when the surveyor's done, they should do is sign it, and then you just keep it, and then just can't forget about it.
If it gets updated, just have them
I
resend
mean, you
it.
have it, it doesn't, if you're submitting that plan set, yeah, and put it in with the plan set, but that's all it
And-
really is, it's
And
adding.
this is part of like the sheet numbering of our regular plan
Oh,
set?
no, good
or-
question.
Okay.
So just like the right of way, where when we pulled out right of way, we said it's not in the overall numbering anymore because it would be crazy to try to manage. Same thing here. This is not going to be in the overall numbering. We do still want it listed in the index, just like we have right of way listed. It's just not going to have the numbering. So just at the
Okay.
bottom of your index saying, hey, I got right of way. Hey, I got survey certification. So it's hard to see, but in the bottom corner, I just have the subset numbering listed, just like we did for right away.
Okay, thanks.
Because yeah, that would be pretty hard to do.
One thing to add to that, JD. So for January, we're going to have edits to sample plans and volume 3 to cover a few extra tweaks on the survey cert. So the title sheet, going through the general note sample plan and pulling out that survey note, a couple other little overlap things that it doesn't hurt to have it shown now in the sample plans, but it's sort of overlap with what that survey cert's going to have. So that'll get updated for January as well.
I think we already answered this one, but Lawton asked, the surveyor should submit the sheet when the survey is delivered, correct? In case the retirement's moving places, etc. We sort of covered that, right? We're going to submit.
Yeah, as soon as they're done, like so, as long as they're not still working on the alignment file, right? If they do the survey, like once they're done with their work,
Yeah.
Ideally they would say, okay, I'm done. Here's my files. I'm signing off. In a perfect world.
And
If they come back later and add more, then it would be like, okay, I'm gonna add this, update my date, and re-sign.
right. Frank asked, is there an app to populate the data, or must all the files, dates, tables, etc. be generated separately and referenced into the sheet?
So not right now. That has been asked several times by the surveyors to help populate. So I don't want to leave you hanging right now. I just got a lot of other things going on. So what my suggestion is, if you use the Indexer app, that will let you pick files and populate an Excel file with the relative path and the name. That could be a little bit easier than doing it all by hand. But that's on my to-do list, is to give you an easier way to populate this. So I know it's probably not exactly what you want to hear, but that's the closest I've got to kind of help you out. So not ideal just yet, but I'll try to get you guys something, or maybe I just make an addition to the indexer just so I don't have to rewrite a whole app or make a whole new app just for this, and can at least like copy to clipboard or something as a quick stopgap where you select your files and can give you that stuff to make it a little bit easier. I remember when I was looking at it, there's the file itself, already is set up with different sections and organization. So It could be a little bit of work, coding work to like insert rows and know like this file goes in this section. So if you want something quick and dirty, that was my idea. And then it's a lot easier for a human to go in and say, oh, this goes in this section for now. But that's my recommendation.
I think it's it. The G105 note can come out of the survey master, right?
Yeah, that is now a feature of the Survey Master, right, Josh? In
And
the survey, Ray, is that still a valid way to do it?
And the control points, Ray? Okay, so you can do some of that.
Yeah, that was, I don't know if you guys are surveyors, and I don't know if I'm sure you've seen the new update to the Survey Master, but there's now a thing in there to help generate that G105 note.
Applies to any survey delivery, right? So that would be Souls, right of way, field book.
The surveyors performing work on your project, then we need their signature.
Yeah, so there was a question just popped up. By right-of-way base map, is that only existing, correct? I would imagine if there's right-of-way, a proposed right-of-way plan, that would be covered. The signatures on that plan would cover the existing right-of-way. Right? Ray?
Yeah.
Right, the existing the right-of-way plan would cover the. Yeah. Maybe you want to take us back to him?
Hold up. We got a lot of people online that want to hear what you have to say. But they don't.
Is the caller there?
It's turned off, so Dave turned.
So the right-of-way plans are business as usual. If there's a right-of-way take involved, there's a set of right-of-way plans being developed, signed and sealed, stuck in the plan set as before. But this is in addition to that. If there's, because a lot of times the monuments that are being held and used in the right-of-way plans don't necessarily coincide with what's in the construction set. So this is, if there's right-of-way takes, this is still required in addition to the right-of-way plan set. Does that answer the question?
I think so.
Okay.
Hopefully that's clear as mud for everybody. If you have questions, call Ray.
Yeah. I think we are. All right. Well, let's take a quick networking break. We'll start back up around 10:15-ish. All right, guys, we'll get started back up here. So quick note, if you guys are in person and you have not signed in, we did turn that back on. So if you wanted to go right outside real quick and sign in, go for it. I'll probably leave it up for like 5 or so minutes. If you still miss that, then and you want to sign in, then come see me. But
All right. Morning, everybody. I'm Matt Phillips with the OhioDOT Geospatial and Engineering Technologies Office, but most of you probably know me as the annoying guy at District 4 that gives you too many comments on your projects. All right. I see some laughs from Structure Point at least, so I'm glad that worked. So today we're going to go over Earthwork. So more than anything, we get some questions occasionally on how to do Earthwork in ORD, but more than anything, we're finding a lot of district reviews that are finding issues with the generation and the quantity takeoffs that they're getting out of ORD. More than anything, it's just we need a little bit better QA process. We need to back check what the software is doing and not just trust that it's spitting it out correctly for us. So Earthwork, some of these projects can be huge cost drivers. So we need to make sure that, again, we're making sure the software is developing that for us, but we still need to check it. We're still the engineers or the designers signing off on those plans. We need to make sure that everything is good. So we're going to do some quick overview on it, and then we're going to go through some examples. So first off, the important thing to remember in ORD is everything has a volume option on it. So open roads, we have basically two ways to visualize all that stuff. We've got our 3D meshes. So you've got all of your corridor elements. You could do a closed mesh. You could do anything like that. Those are going to have a lot more options for what you can assign to it with a volume option. So again, that's pretty much anything in a corridor you're going to model or create for part of your project. And then we've got terrain models, which typically are just going to be from our survey field book. And those have a few less options, which we'll talk about in a second. But those, again, are basically just going to be surfaces that we're going to be using as a basis for our earthwork. Let's see here. So the mesh elements, like I said, they have the most volume options. That's a little small on the screen. It always looks better on your computer when you're putting it together than when you're putting it up on the screen. But you can see here there are 9 volume options for mesh elements, and we're going to go over all these in just a second. But you can sort of see how you can dive down into the settings and see what those are, as well as the terrain models are limited down to 4. And we're going to go through all these here in just a second. So I'll give everyone a moment just to go ahead and read that page. I'll go wander around for a little while. So this is taken directly from a Bentley post. Basically, there was, and I think this was years ago, but somebody had asked the question of what are all the volume options, and Bentley came back with that breakdown. Obviously, no one can read this. No one has the time to read this, so we'll simplify it a little bit here. So the different volume options we've got, so the first one is none. So essentially, ORD is going to ignore that when we go through and run our earthwork volumes. So that's going to be pavement to remain, so outside of our work limits, existing aggregate, just because that's quantified as, if that's staying in there, you would just treat it like soil and ignore it anyway. But in general, none. ORD is just going to ignore that element, whether it's displayed or not when running those volumes. The design volume option is essentially anything you're going to put into your corridor. So that's going to be your proposed pavement, your proposed aggregate, curb, grading, anything like that. That's going to be a proposed finished element with your project. The existing components would be essentially your existing mesh. So like we said a second ago, the terrain models basically going to be the baseline for all of your cut and fills. So that existing terrain is going to be set to existing, and then everything is going to be compared to that for the cut and fill. The cut and fill volume options are essentially not used. Those are just going to be assigned to what get generated by open roads when we run through the process. The cut one I will touch on in my second presentation for ditch undercuts. So we'll talk about why I decided to use that volume option and feature definition a little bit later. But typically when you're going through and creating these volumes, you're going to have your cut and fill volumes, and that's getting those volume options assigned to them. You're not going to use them otherwise. The unsuitable, custom, and substrata. So the unsuitable, we're going to use that for either pavement removed, or if you've got unsuitable subgrade, you can put that into your corridor as well for an undercut or chemical treatment to have that, pull it out as a separate pay item. And an expansion upon that is also with custom. So you could assign certain custom feature definitions to that if you wanted to, say, split your structural excavation backfill for a retaining wall or something like that. We'll touch on it a little more later, but right now Open Roads doesn't have the capability to automatically annotate anything beyond cut and fill. So even though it will generate volumes for the unsuitable or custom if you develop it, that's not built into the feature definition or the text favorites that are in there right now. So at some point in the future, I'm sure that'll get added in there, but we can at least get those volumes right now, just not the auto annotation. The substrata volume option is in there for if you have anything geotechnical you want to try to model, get in there, whether you've got different strata or say rock surface or anything like that you want to handle a certain way. And then that last one for subgrade, this is really just a holdover from inroads. You wouldn't anticipate usually using that in your project. But again, these are all built into the software. So before we get into the examples, so right now, volume 3, I mentioned earlier, we've got, since I got pulled in, one of the things I've been helping a lot with is just sort of an overhaul of the volume 3 manual, making sure it makes sense with open roads, make sure it makes sense with our current processes and other recommendations. So on the left side there, you can see our current file naming conventions. 3D modeling, we're pretty much always using the KM file. Digital terrain, KD. This is sort of a catch-all for anything else 3D that we're using right now in open roads. We're seeing a lot of people doing pavement modeling or earthwork or maybe a proposed surface, or again, it's just sort of use it for whatever you want. That isn't something else that's clearly defined in volume 3. And then we've also got the FD, which would be typically a isolated terrain file. So in January, anything in red there you can see is the proposed stuff coming. And I will note this has just been my and Matt Ivan's brainchild so far. So none of this has gone through the approval process. So these could all change naming or if we even do them. But right now we're planning on splitting it out to show a existing model file. So that would be for your existing pavement model, or if you've got anything else existing that you want to try to get in there. We're going to hold the KM for our corridors and other proposed modeling. We, in past conversations, have talked about recommending a control file. So for any of your point controls, any scratch alignments, anything else like that that you're using for your corridors, we recommend having a second file to contain all that. So we're going to create the KC base map for that. JMT is helping us develop the workspace for Open Bridge Modeler. That's going to bring in the KB base map file name. We're going to keep the KD file, but we're going to refer to that now as a proposed DTM only. So if you go through your corridor modeling and you get to the end of your job and you want to have a finished terrain surface, whether that's just a contractor request, if you need it for other design elements or whatever, that's going to be the warehouse to hold that. For earthwork volumes, that's another one that right now we're seeing get dumped into a KD a lot. We're going to create that KV file. The FD we're going to hold over. Right now we're referring to it as a field DTM. We would also, we just threw in the descriptor there that if you're doing a complex or a combined terrain, you can throw that in there as well, with the expectation that that would still be existing terrain files that you're blending together. And then another thing we've talked about in past CAD users groups would be the recommendation of having a standalone base map for plan annotation. So we're putting a file name in there for that as well with the BN file. So again, these right now are intended to come out in January, but the naming or extent of those could change a little bit. So with this presentation, so first off, I apologize. You've got me in between you and lunch, so hopefully I don't put anybody to sleep before that. You can have an afternoon nap instead. But we're basically going to run through existing pavement modeling, which a lot of firms we're noticing are potentially doing their earthwork volumes correctly, but then if there's no existing pavement modeled, obviously all your numbers are going to be completely off. So we're going to run through a quick overview on that first. So at the beginning there, we show that the ORD training guide actually goes over 2 ways to do this. You can either do the clip terrain or create a terrain from break lines, and then you can assign either a surface template or a closed mesh to that. So if you're interested in those techniques, you can go to the ORD training, either just request that we create that training folder for you. You can do it on your own time, or in the future when we host another one of those, you can go through those. But if nothing else, there is that PDF document and work set that you can play around in. What we're going to go through here is a third option, just to sort of show, in a microstation and ORD, there's almost always 4 or 5 ways to do everything. We're just going to show another option here that seems to work out pretty well and is pretty quick. But I do have a flag there at the bottom. Regardless what technique you do, the feature definition is vital. So the feature definitions are all going to assign your volume option we talked about a second ago. If you set the volume or the feature definition to existing pavement, but it should be removed, you're not going to get your correct volumes and vice versa. So when you model your pavement, you will have to break it up for your project limits.
So wherever your saw cut starts, you'll have to break up your pavement models there to reflect that appropriately. So after we go through and model that existing pavement, we're then going, or to do that, we're going to create a new file. Again, I mentioned if in the future, we're probably going to have that as a KX file. Right now, if you're using the Create Design Files app, it'd be a KD. Reference all your files in there. We're going to create an alignment to push this corridor that we're going to develop, create a quick overlay template, and then we're going to put some point controls on there to make sure we're matching the pavement. So we'll see if this video goes okay here, and I'll try talking over it. If need be, I can jump ahead because I know some of these videos that I recorded these with the intention of posting them separately from this presentation, so they might get a little wordy at times, and we'll just jump ahead as need be. So really what we're going to do in here, so like I said, we're going to jump in and go ahead and do that create design. So I think everyone knows how to do this part, so we're going to skip ahead just a little bit. So I'm going in there and creating that KD file. Again, that could be a KX in the future. If we go with those new file names, we'll work with JD to get that app updated. And then I am showing in here. So it defaults when you first pick it to a design 3D. For the way I'm going to model this one, I went with the design 2D so that I have the flexibility of doing some more in the 2D space here. We're going to go ahead and jump over and open that file. And when we get in here, jump ahead a little bit. Okay, so basically what I've done, I've brought in, so first off, this is in ORD 2026, which I'll touch on when we get into the corridor template. JD mentioned it earlier with needing to have the point name in there in your template creation. So we'll go over that in the video. But in here in 2026, I'm going to, what is the video doing here? Okay, so for this one, we're going to just create a generic alignment. So this alignment, because we're going to do an overlay component for modeling this pavement, this alignment is sort of arbitrary. It's just something to push the alignment along. So you'll see that I'm just doing a real quick best fit alignment on that crown of the pavement. It doesn't matter that it's not perfectly centered because when we apply the overlay component, it's just going to drape to the terrain anyway. So we've got that alignment there. We're going to set our active terrain model. And then we're going to launch our profile view for that alignment so that we can set that profile active. If you're going to push a corridor through, you need to have the alignment. You need to have that profile so that it's got a elevation to assign it to. So once that's all good, we're going to hop into our corridor creation. So like I said, there's a couple options in the training guide already for doing a clip terrain and a closed mesh, or clip terrain with the surface terrain or surface template. This one, we're going to do an overlay template. So typically that's used for pavement planing or a wedge course or something like that. We're going to show that it's able to be used for existing modeling as well. So in this template creation, I'm showing here in the dynamic settings, again, in ORD 2026, if you don't put that point name in there, the template is not going to create properly for you. JD sort of touched on that in his section. And I'm going through and just setting a feature definition for those points I'm going to be drawing in. So if you haven't used the overlay component in the template dialog before, very, very simple. Basically, you're going to tell it to follow a top surface and a bottom surface. In this one, because it's going to be existing pavement, we're just going to follow the existing terrain for both of those. And we're going to set a specified depth. You can see there on the bottom that I'm throwing a name in here real quick, and I set the feature definition to existing concrete. Existing, again, with the feature definition, that volume option is going to be assigned by the feature definition. So I'm going to end up creating two overlay components here. And with this one, I just did a generic 1 foot depth. And I'm setting my step intervals just so I can draw this a little bit cleaner here. So with that overlay component, again, since it's going to get draped to the surface, the way I draw this doesn't really matter. The width of it, the slope of it, all of the constraints on this overlay component are sort of arbitrary. So we're just going to go in here, throw in 3 quick points for a left edge of pavement, a crown, and a right edge of pavement. Go ahead and finish that component. And because of the way I drew that, you can see right now the crown point, which we would typically have as the PGL, is constrained to that first point just because of the direction I drew that. So I'm going to blow out both the constraints on that crown point in the template. Go ahead and blow those out. And then since that is now at the 0, 0 insertion point, I'm going to constrain the other two to it. Again, this doesn't really matter. It's just to keep the template a little bit cleaner looking. So I am going to jump ahead and put a slope and horizontal constraint on both of those points on our template. So you can see in here, this is the left edge of pavement one. So I'm just going to throw a real quick horizontal slope constraint. And this is, again, really just to make it look like the pavement would look. Throw the slope in there that makes a little bit more sense. And jump ahead and do the right side as well. So now that I've got that overlay template created, I'm going to take a copy of it, go ahead and dump that into our template folder, rename it to be removed. So again, feature definition is going to assign the volume option. So I started out with the existing pavement. I'm now going to switch this one over to existing pavement to be removed. So I believe I'm going to change the component name to just to be overly descriptive. And we're going to set that feature definition as well. There we go. So we've now got 2 overlay templates that we can throw onto our corridor. So if we jump back out into our 2D design, and we're going to go ahead and create a corridor on here. So again, for a corridor, you need an alignment with an active profile, and you need those templates. So we've got all that now. We can go ahead and get rolling. So what we're going to do through here, jump ahead just a tiny bit. So once we, okay, so we've picked that alignment, and I'm just picking some generic station ranges. Again, this is just a demo. If you were doing it on your project, you'd have to be a little more critical of your start and end spots for existing to be removed. I'm just throwing a couple generic stations in here, accepting those, and then grabbing the template we just created. I'm now going to switch that template to the other one, and we're going to do another station range adjacent to that one. So think of this as your approach existing pavement to remain, and then your existing pavement to be removed within your project limits. So now jump ahead here a little bit. You can see that assigned that corridor template, and because it's an overlay component, again, it draped to our terrain surface. But what you'll also see is the width of this is not matching anything because I just set it up as a generic 10-foot left and right. So if we jump ahead just a little bit, we're going to go ahead and throw a point control on it. First, I'm going to open the 3D and cross-section views just so you can see all this in real time as it gets detailed a little bit. So right now you can see, again, that's sampling that surface. If you were to do, say, a boundary with brake lines, you have to be very careful. You're actually grabbing all the brake lines to accurately model that pavement. Sometimes we've seen issues in the past with, say, a second lane brake or the crown not being put in as a brake line in that terrain, causing some issues. With this, you don't have to worry about it. It's going to mimic those terrains and all those brake lines automatically. But like I said, you can see that this is wider than the existing pavement is. So what's nice, you can use the survey feature lines that are in there from the field book as a point control alignment. So what we're going to go through, skip ahead just a little while. So right here, we right clicked on the corridor. We're going to go down and do a point control. And because these are both the same corridor and they have the same point names and everything else, I'm going to assign this point control to the entire corridor length. Again, on your project, that might vary depending on if you're going through an intersection or anything else, if you have a couple different alignments for your point control. So go ahead in there, grab our station to station limits, throw a quick name on it. We're grabbing the point from the corridor that we want to assign it to. And then you can see I'm grabbing that edge of pavement survey line as our alignment to drive that horizontal geometry. And then once we go through and accept all that, you can see down in the cross section that box pops up. I'm sure everyone's familiar with those now. That's just showing we've got a point control on there, and you can see that that edge of pavement pulled in. And jump ahead just a tiny bit here. We're going to go ahead and do that process for the left side as well. And you can see as well in that cross-section view, the existing pavement has the hatch on it. That is showing we're within the pavement to be removed section of that corridor. And as we jump around here where the hatch disappears, this is the existing pavement to remain. That's a display setting you can do with your feature definition if you want your corridor to do that, similar for subgrade treatment or anything like that. So probably flew through that pretty quickly. But again, it's very similar to how the manual training guide goes over it, just another option of how to get that in there. So we've now got our existing pavement modeled. Off to the side, we've also got all of our proposed corridors developed. We need to now go through and develop our earthwork. So overview on that workflow there. Again, we're going to create a design file. In the future, we'd like that to be that KV. We're going to attach all of our 3D elements. So you need your survey terrain, you need your models, you need your existing pavement model, anything else you have. In a later video, we're also going to bring that ditch undercut model in that we're going to go over. So anything that you've got developed for a 3D component, we're going to want to bring that in if it would impact your earthwork. Once we go through the routine, the software is going to create all of those prismoidal volumes or meshes, and then they're all going to get assigned a certain level with symbology. And you can see on the screen there that certain colors are easy to identify as those different levels. So then I mentioned at the beginning here, the most important thing, it's great to say software create these earthwork volumes for me, but we're running into a lot of cases where we're getting plans in, and if we jump in the CAD files, we're seeing that they're clearly not being checked because there's just a lot of oddball stuff in there. So most important thing you can do, use the software to generate that, but then make sure you're getting the results that you're expecting. Once we do that, we do our own little bit of QA, QC. We're going to then go through, create our cross-section drawing, assign all those volumes to our name boundaries, and then get all that annotation in there. So we're going to jump into another video here, hopefully. There we go. Okay. So in this one, like I said, we're going to go ahead and go through and start creating those volumes, and then we're going to go through and review them. I will jump ahead a little bit here. We all know how to create a design file. In the future, I'll edit the video down twice so that one is postable and one is presentable. Okay, so we've created that new CADD file. We're now going to go through and, again, reference in all of our 3D design files. Apparently half this video is just file management. Okay, there we go. So we've got all of that in there, and all I'm going through and doing now is just a little bit of level cleanup. This isn't really necessary. It just makes reviewing it a little bit easier. From your field book, you really only need your surface, so you don't need any of the other survey features in there, unless there's something else in that field book that may impact your earthwork. I'm then going through and cleaning out all the levels in the corridors except for those surface elements that are going to have those design feature definitions set to them. Again, this is really just to clean up the file a little bit, so when we get into our dynamic sections, we're not going to get, you know, a lot of times you'll go through the sections and you'll see pretty much any survey element show up as a line or some other weird visualization just because it's getting sliced through as well. None of that would matter. So jump back just for a second here since I was talking too much. After we get all that referenced in there, we're going to jump to civil analysis dropdown, create cut fill volumes. And then the key here, we're going to zoom in over on the side. So volume cut, volume fill come in as defaulted. You need to make sure you toggle on the compute unsuitable. If you toggle that off, it's going to ignore existing pavement to be removed. It's going to ignore subgrade treatment. It's going to ignore all that stuff. It's only going to give you cut and fill, which is not what we want at this time. So we go through, accept all of those settings. And this project isn't too big. Again, this is the Bentley data set that comes in the training. So this will run through, create all your surfaces real quick, and then create those volumes between, again, essentially what it's taking is the existing survey terrain, is comparing your proposed grading, pavement, whatever else, and it's checking to see, do we need to cut, do we need to fill, what do we need to do to get to our proposed finished condition. So once we've created those volumes, we're now going to go through and review those. So what this is going to do, you can see this is that same file I was in a second ago. All those volumes are already created. And we're going to go ahead and open up some dynamic cross sections. So one thing, and I will just pause this video real quick. You can see in that training data set, there's a good bit of full relocation of the roadway where we're completely outside the existing roadway bed. What I ran into when I was testing this is if you run through the earthwork initially without telling it to restore that grading area there, it will pull the pavement out, but it will not backfill it. So it'll leave that as a void because it doesn't know there's anything proposed going back in that spot. So it just leaves it as basically a depression where the pavement was pulled out. So what I did for this example, anywhere we were outside of the existing roadway, I essentially took the existing pavement model surface, copied that into this file, and created just a very simple proposed boundary terrain for that area, put a design feature definition on it or volume option on it. So what I was doing is telling the software, after you pull this pavement out, because I told you it's pavement to be removed, I want you to restore the surface back to the top of that pavement. So then when it ran through the earthwork volumes, it filled that void back in. The software will not do that automatically. Again, because it doesn't see a proposed element there, so it knows to take it out. It doesn't know to put it back in. So just one of those cases where we think we're telling the software exactly what we want, but once you review it, you see it's not coming out quite correctly. So I'm really just showing here to start out, all those volumes are created, again, by all the different colors. You can see what that's delineated. The green and blue are your cut and fill. The red, I believe, is the pavement to be removed. And then there's the yellow also in there, which is removed and replaced. So we've got all those volumes in there. We're now going to go ahead and open some dynamic cross sections. And in this video, I had some specific stations. I basically went through the entire corridor, whatever interval you've got set up for your dynamic sections, to flag some spots that show exactly what I want to check for. So a full fill condition, a full cut condition, some half and half. I flagged those, and in this video, I'm just going to jump to a few of those just so we can go ahead and check our volumes. So if we jump ahead a little bit, so I will just go ahead and pause on here real quick. So as I'm going through this video, you can see that there is a delineated green cut volume being sliced there, and there's a blue fill volume. So all of these look to be delineating correctly. So again, where we're putting a proposed ditch in, we're cutting into the ground. Where we're doing a proposed graded shoulder there on the right side, we're needing to fill that in. So all of those delineated areas seem to be functioning correctly. Underneath there, you can see that little sliver of where the existing pavement's below the proposed pavement. Again, the software knows that pavement's being pulled out. There's a proposed element on top of it, so it has to fill it in. We can't have that void underneath. So the software knows it needs to put that into the fill volume. Here's another cross section where we are in a complete fill situation. There is no cut at all in here, but it is again showing that pavement got removed. It's getting backfilled with 203 embankment, and then all of the sides of the pavement as well are getting filled in. So this is all looking good so far. Jump ahead a little bit. Here we're in a full cut. Again, this one, the existing pavement gets removed. The software knows it was removed and needs to stay out. So when it does the cut volume, it goes to the bottom of that existing pavement footprint. So that's acting correctly again. And this one is starting to get into the relocation area. So you can see we're completely offline of that pavement now. And I'll just pause here real quick. So again, where that pavement is outside of the roadway, but we've got a proposed element, it knows how to handle it. If there was no ditch grading here, it would have removed that pavement and then just left basically to the existing subgrade line, would have just left that as a void. So as we review this here, this one again looks good. That pavement gets removed, filled into our proposed grading. And then on the right side there, it's calculating that cut volume. So that all looks good for us. And if we jump ahead just a little bit here. So now this is where the I don't want to call it an error, but the confusion as far as what I wanted the software to do popped up. So where that proposed or existing pavement is outside of our proposed grading, it removed the pavement and then left a void. So I again created a very, very generic proposed surface to recreate the existing. So I'm just saying reestablish the existing grade when we're done with the project. You obviously could grade that in a different way if you wanted. We could have flattened this back slope to go tie down to that edge of existing pavement, or however we wanted to handle that. But we need to tell it this is the proposed surface. So we went through and created that proposed surface terrain there, and then the software knows that it needs to backfill that with 203. So all of those sections have now checked out. The software behaved how we expected it to. This is a cross-section file that I already had created. Again, the point of this video is not to create the cross-sections, it's to do the earthwork. So if you've got questions on that, we've got other videos. And all this is going to show is, and I guess I will step back, you can create your cross-section sheets before or after doing your earthwork volumes, but you need to remember that the annotation is not automatic. So if you create your cross-sections first, bring your earthwork volumes in later, you're going to have to push that annotation through your drawing. We'll go through that at the end of the video here, but in this one, that's the case. The cross-sections were already created. If you create your earthwork volumes first, then your cross-section sheets, when you go through and do your initial model annotation, obviously all those volumes are going to come in. So what I'm doing here is just referencing that earthwork volume drawing into my cross-section sheets. And again, cleaning up, I'm going to jump down to that and turn all those levels off. So all of those volumes come in as a construction element, so they will not plot. But when you're looking at the cross sections, you will see them. So it sometimes makes it a little confusing if you're maybe reviewing something else. So I'm just reinforcing that here. Those are construction elements. They won't plot, but I like to turn them off just to make the cross sections look as they're going to plot. As long as that file is in your drawing, it will still get sliced by the named boundaries and it'll still populate your end areas. So clean that up a little bit. They were then going to, and I had more to say. Then we're going to jump back to civil analysis. Again, we've got those earthwork volumes in there. We've got named boundaries. We're going to do our end area volume report. So essentially what this is going to do is say we've got all these volumes that are flooding in between our proposed surface and our existing surface. The named boundaries are slicing through those volumes to get our end areas in each of our cross sections. This process assigns those end areas to the named boundaries for annotation. So I'm grabbing that named boundary group, and there is the option in ORD if you have a intersection or a bridge or some irregular shaped area you want to gap out your earthwork, you can suspend and resume. In this example, we're not going to do that, but you do have that functionality, and you can actually gap out a couple times. So if you had a couple small bridges in your corridor or something like that, you could gap all those out. So once we, I'm not sure what else I'm talking about. There we go. Once we assign all those to the named boundaries, it automatically spits out this report. So it's going to give you your typical earthwork style report, station to station, your end areas, your then volumes between each cross section. We'll talk on it a little bit later as well. There's no functionality right now for centroidal adjustments. So if you've got curvature that you need to apply to your earthwork, that's a not supported feature in open roads right now. We do have an IDEO that we'll throw a link in here in a little bit. I am just reinforcing here in that report, you can go into the format settings, format this how you want to see it with everything rounded to whole square foot, whole square cubic yard. And if you wanted to export it to help create your earthwork subsummary or anything like that, you have that option. You don't need to export it. This has already, when it created the report, it has assigned it to your named boundary. So you can just close that without needing to do anything special. And what we're showing here now, it'll probably be very hard to see on the screen because it's such a long string. But if you select a name boundary, go down to your civil properties, you can see there that it now has stationing and earthwork volumes assigned to that in that text string there. That's essentially the data that the annotation is going to pull into our cross-section sheets. So we've got our volumes, we've got our end areas assigned to our name boundaries. If you hop over to a drawing model, and I hop around a little bit here in the video to show a couple things, but in the drawing model, as soon as you activate it, those fields automatically update. So these end areas and volumes are automatically reading the name boundaries and they're populating automatically. If you jump to a sheet model, however, and jump into there, you'll see these are still zeroed out. So the sheet model does not activate those fields. The drawing model does. So you've got a couple options. Again, if you've created sheets first and then you run your earthwork, you probably don't want to use the drawing model annotation tools because you're going to have to pull out everything so that you can re-annotate the grids and get the earthwork volumes in there as well. Another idea we'll have at the end of the presentation is being able to pull out a specific group of annotation. So again, we'll put that link in so everyone can try to vote for that idea. If you create the earthwork volumes before your sheets, you could run through your standard model annotation and to bring that all in there. The other workaround we've got here, though, if we're going to hop over to a sheet model, and you can see right now, all of those fields are just zeros right now. I'll give Matt credit for this one. He came up with, or he found the solution. If you go to your key in, and I'll back up for just a second so you can actually see that. If you go to your key in field, and you type in the command field update all file. In this case, I didn't have to type it in. It was already in my recently used, but once you launch that key in command, it's going to do just that. It's going to go through all models in your drawing, activate and update all fields in that file. So you can see I'm in a sheet model right now. When I launch that command, even with this being a pretty decent sized cross-section file, it only takes a second to go through and update every single field. And we'll see all those pop in just a second. And you can see all those are in there. So again, you could re-annotate. That can be a big pain in the butt if you've got a ton of underground that you've already annotated or something else. So this is a workaround for that. One thing I will note, I think I zoom in the video here in a second. These are all left justified. I believe that's just a glitch, right, Matt? In open roads.
Yeah, JD was saying, someone asked about that earlier. That was a bug or something. It wasn't honoring the text favorite justification, so I did the best I could. But we included a point on those cells that you could move it over to, or you can do whatever you need to. What's that? Delete it? Is that what you said? But I did the best I could to try and make it fit, but it's not going to, as you can see, it's not going to work in every situation. Make your own cell if you want. I'm not going to repeat it, but that's an option too.
All right. So then just to wrap up the earthwork here. So a few common issues we're seeing, like I said, with either say it's a district review of a plan set or sometimes even a issue during construction. So some of the things we're seeing, and we don't have an official poll or anything, but so a couple of these. So the first one, doubling of earthwork volumes. Anybody think of a reason we might have run our earthwork volumes and we're getting double or triple or whatever of what the earthwork would actually be? So if you run it the second time, it does give you the option to delete it. You could hit no, so that would be one option, was it would flood that the second time. We actually had a project recently where they had 2 stages worth of earthwork drawings referenced into the cross-section sheets. So when they ran it, it was then grabbing those twice. So both those are good examples of why that could be an issue. And obviously, if you're doubling your earthwork, you're drastically different on your price for what you would actually be. How about double counting pavement removal? Any thoughts on that one? And maybe that's a little misleading by saying double counting, but how about paying for removal of pavement twice? Not necessarily in the same pay item. Any thoughts? So we're seeing a lot of projects come in. Again, earthwork volumes we're seeing are being created. They're getting carried to the sheets. But then if you look close at the cross sections, there is no existing pavement modeled. So that means they've got a removal sub-summary that's saying, hey, from here to here, remove all this pavement as a 202. But then the cross sections, they're removing that as 203 excavation as well. So it's not the same pay item being duplicated, but it is duplicating that work. So again, we're getting inaccurate estimates for that. And then what about any issues with not toggling on that compute unsuitable when you run your cut fill? I think I sort of touched on that, but any thoughts? There you go. Yeah, so if you don't put that on there, it's only going to do your cut fill. It's going to ignore anything else. So essentially, it's going to function like everything else in that drawing is set to the none volume option. It's just going to completely ignore it. So if you've got existing pavement removed or unsuitable subgrade or anything like that, it's going to ignore all of those when creating your cut fills. Okay, hopefully earthwork wasn't too bad. So in expansion, yeah, question? Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Okay. Yeah. So the recommendation for anyone online, if they can't hear, was just to, with most of our videos and training sets, these are usually simpler projects. So to try to come up with more complicated examples for those, in all honesty, this was just a simple data set to work with. I did mess around with, we've got a District 4 in-house project we've got right now. I messed around with that a little bit while working through this as well, but just wanted to share the Bentley one. But yeah, I appreciate that recommendation. Yeah. You want to do the? Yeah, 1 second.
I've been doing cross sections and sometimes run into the issue where I just cut them all in 10 scale so that I avoid match lines. Because I think the issue that I've seen with match lines is if you put the earthwork in the earthwork or in the cross section sheets, I know that some people have had some issues with it computing wrong because it kind of counts it twice or something.
Mm-hmm.
I know we've gotten a few workarounds, but are you all aware of any way to actually be able to have a match line cross section and it not double compute without manually editing the?
So we haven't played around with testing that so much, but we do have an idea for if a cross section needs to be wider than our default name boundary to have it automatically create those match lines. Because right now you're manually creating extra name boundaries, I'm sure, right? So just adjacent to the other one. I don't think I've run earthwork with match lines yet, so I haven't tested that out.
Same name, they'll try and compute earthwork in between them, and there's a zero width, so it just completely messes it up.
So it's still taking those as adjacent sections.
Yeah.
So it's trying to do a zero length times.
Yeah.
Then, okay.
In between here and here, so
yeah, you would almost, I would think a workaround for that is, like you said, you could cut, and well, not a good workaround. I was going to say
we just cut dummy.
Yeah, I was going to say
boundaries.
Cut larger scale cross sections to get your earthwork end areas.
Yeah, that's what we're doing now, and then we just separate it out. So didn't know if there's a better way yet.
Yeah, I hate duplicating that. I guess, Matt, any other?
Cut the second one 1/10 ahead or back or something.
Well,
yeah, it'll calculate between those.
So it takes the previous one and one of the sections and then these two together, and then this little tiny one with the next one, it's the automatic end areas are completely messed up.
Okay.
Start doing
I honestly haven't
So
played around
that's
with it a whole
when we
bunch.
Go with the just having not putting them in the sheets because the automatic stuff just is completely.
Yeah, so a lot of the roundabouts I do, 5 scale would work, but right when you get to the circle, it's like, all right, just make them all 10 scale.
I mean, yeah, I would say every project is sort of, you need to make it a best fit, right? If you've got, even if you have cross sections around your circulatory, those earthwork end areas are not really accurate anyway, just because of the curvature correction and other issues with it. So what I've done on mine, and maybe this isn't the official ODOT recommendation, but what I've done is basically use that gap out tool. So as you start getting out of your more standardized approach to your roundabout, suspend and resume earthwork to skip the roundabout, and then pick it up again on the exit leg, and then just use your volumes from your earthwork drawing. And I usually just do an earthwork adjustment. So in the earthwork sub summary, you've got all your station of stations, and at the bottom have like, you know, a roundabout earthwork adjustment that then brings it to what we know are the true volumes in there. So I'd say any irregular areas that the cross sections don't really reflect accurately, the end areas aren't going to be accurate either. So that's at least what I've done in the past.
Thank you.
Is there another question? I thought, yeah, in the back. I'm glad everyone's still awake. We're getting questions. It's good.
Hey, so I was wondering on widening, or where you're resurfacing in the middle of the road, but maybe you're doing full depth on the edges.
Yeah.
Do you just have to make a proposed component in the middle under your resurfacing so that it doesn't count that pavement? What do you typically do there?
Yeah, so it's definitely one of the most common ways for the earthwork not to be right is for that stripping component in the middle. So what we've seen to work really well is have your resurfacing be one component, your widening to be another component, and then all of your grading and everything else, obviously, as you typically would do. I think in the ODOT templates right now, the surface actually goes all the way from the crown to the edge of lane. So it overlaps with that saw cut, and I think it gives incorrect earthwork volumes when you do it that way. So yeah, what we've talked about, and honestly, I haven't gotten back to test it out yet. Our in-house job, I'm going to try to rework that to see if it works out better. Because again, mine right now, the surface intermediate straddle that saw cut, and it's giving me a cut volume for the milling. So then, with it being stage 1, I'm not doing end areas or anything yet. So I just deducted that before I carried it to my general summary and knew I had to fix it later. But if you have a component from your crown to your saw cut for the resurfacing, and then from your saw cut to the edge for your widening, it should fix that. And then you just have to make sure you handle those feature definitions correctly in the middle to remove the pavement, but not do it as excavation in that area.
Okay, so then we would have 2 different kinds of removed pavement for that. You need like an edge removed pavement, existing pavement.
You already need to, I guess there's a couple ways you could do it. You already need to model the existing pavement in the resurfacing as to remain. But then what it's thinking is the pavement's remaining, so it's got a none volume option, so it ignores it. So then when that proposed surface comes in with design, it thinks you need to make room for it. So I think you could either, trying to think of the best way to do that. Yeah, you could either use a different feature definition for your resurfacing so it doesn't force that excavation, or you could, how could you do that? Could you do it the opposite way with the existing feature definition?
Yeah, right now we just make a component between the bottom of our resurfacing and the bottom of the existing pavement. It's just a scratch component.
Okay.
But I didn't know if there was a better way. I could try those methods you mentioned.
Yeah, and I feel like in the past, I swear the stripping component for the pavement planing worked, and now it seems like it's not working. So I don't know if something changed, but again, I haven't played around with it that much. Because when you set that planing component to be a stripping element, it's supposed to handle that differently, and it seems like it's not at least on my project, it wasn't handling it correctly. But that was what I found, was that you're modeling the existing pavement is to remain. But then when that proposed element comes through with a design volume option, it needs to make room for it. So it throws that extra cut in there. So that's sort of that trick in there. So yeah, you'd almost have to model your resurfacing as a none feature depth or volume option. So it just ignores that area in there, and you just get your pavement calcs to cover it.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else?
There's a couple comments online. I'm not quite sure. Well, is there anything else in the room? Doesn't look like it. Not quite sure what exactly Jeff says. Looks like there's changes in cross-section sheets in 2026. They're also showing pavement and slopes. He has a screenshot of a cross-section with the pavement. Just to reiterate, the L&D still and always says we only show the subgrade. Pavement layers are not shown. And then the way our annotation group is set up is we just, in order to account for as much of the slope annotation as possible, we just have the annotation group set up to annotate everything on the top surface. So it is going to annotate all of the slopes. So you can modify that annotation group to try and remove those. So only annotate things from a certain offset left to right, or based on certain feature definitions, or isolate it down to certain point names. But we haven't gone that far because we don't know what you're going to name all your points or what feature definitions you're going to use. As soon as we start doing that, and then it doesn't accommodate all those other conditions we might run into. So we tried to make it pretty generic in that regard.
Yeah, I guess to that point too, I was on a recent roadway ODOT wide roadway call. Some districts want the pavement slopes labeled because they want to be able to check it. And then other districts don't want it shown because if it's not modeled perfectly, it's not going to match, and then it causes confusion. At least when we get to digital delivery, we're not annotating anymore, so it doesn't matter, but we're also going to have a more accurate model. So if you've got a slope transition, the model needs to be reflecting that anyway. But I guess for January, we'll try to get some more guidance in there to reinforce what gets shown, and B, what should be labeled. But I guess I always hate to say it's as the district wants it, but it's clear that some districts want it a different way. So just check with your PM before you get to it, and then talk about it after that, right?
Yeah, that's always that's another discussion. But so Dan, I think Dan was just confirming what Jeff had said there. There's another comment here from Josh about doubling the quantities. I think he's referring to, he has a screenshot here when you run the quantity report by name boundary. If you have checked on the display clipped graphics, that possibly could be including some additional quantities there. But one of the things that I know that Matt was referring to, and that we've run into because there were plan errors and change orders due to this, and things that ended up in our office to look at why there was quantities were doubled on a couple projects. It took me like 5 or 10 minutes once I got into the project and looked. It was there were roundabout projects, and they had earthwork was for one road ran in one cross-section file and base map, and then for the east-west leg, and then in the other base map for the north-south leg, it was also ran, and then they were attached to each other when they did their reports, so it was doubling the quantities from both file. It was exactly the same, so you got to check. If a couple spot checks were done, that would have been probably easy to find. That was probably the thing that we were finding, or in a couple cases we've seen happen. So the best practice there is make sure you're separating out where you do that earthwork, those meshes in a separate file, and don't do them in your cross-section sheet files, because then when you reference them all together, you're going to run into that, get one base map that covers the whole project.
And I guess I should have mentioned too, for the QA, I was going over making sure it delineates correctly, but also make sure it's quantifying it directly when you do your name boundary, when you apply that to it. And I go through that more in the ditch undercut here in a second, but just because it's delineated correctly, there's always option, or there's different reasons why it could be spitting out the wrong number where you've got duplicates or whatever. So it's always a good idea to spot check a couple cross sections too, to make sure those are actually matching the number.
Say, how did Matt respond to that one? He's standing over there. You got it on his computer.
Are you insulting a bunch of people from my computer?
Yeah. Alyssa has a question. If you set up your templates wrong to begin with on the way it calculates earthwork, is there a way to synchronize all templates in a file at once to correct it? I've run into this quite a bit and usually go through each one by one and hit sync, which could be missed easily. I think there is a way.
So you can sync an entire corridor.
Yeah, I thought so.
But if you do linear templates, you have to go drop by drop. So that's one of the limitations of linear templates that I've gotten burnt with before. Because then, yeah, you have to go through your Explorer, basically right click everyone and sync it to make sure you're getting them all. And then Explorer is nice enough to, when you sync it, it duplicates it in the list. So the more you click, the more it looks like there are, which is just a weird display issue. But at least that's what I'm aware of. Is corridor, you can sync everything at once, but linear templates are one at a time.
Yeah, there is an idea there too.
To sync all linear templates at once, or to sync the whole drawing?
It's well, this idea is to sync all template jobs for all corridors and linear templates in a file.
Okay.
Got 240 votes, so it's
nice. Here. I do know recently too, I don't think 26 fixed it. If you go into your corridor objects and it shows the template drop is red, which shows it's out of date. If you sync it, it still stays red. So even though you see it physically update in your section view, so that's a nice feature too, that they give you feedback, but the feedback's not right. So just keep that in mind, that it's good practice to check your corridor objects to see if everything is up to date, but it may have been synced and it's just showing you as red text. So
I think that's it we have, or that's all we have over here.
Cool. All right, we'll jump into ditch undercuts then. Again, a lot of the videos here, I developed them assuming it's completely separate from this presentation. So there's going to be some overlap. We can jump around a little bit. But this is really going to build off of really the workflow for modeling existing pavement, get into our earthwork drawing, run those volumes, check those volumes, annotate. So first, why do we need to do ditch undercuts in the first place? So this was a relative recent addition to the geotechnical design manual. It may have always been guidance or a preference depending on the geotech on the project, but it's in the manual now and it's not especially apparent. So basically, if you have an existing ditch in your project and you are filling on top of that, the assumption is that that ditch is full of crappy sediment material. It's not going to be stable to build on. We want to excavate some of that out of there, put back good material, and then we can go on with the project. So again, I want to say in the couple years I've been at OhioDOT, about a year ago, it seemed like all of a sudden this comment came up on every project from geotechs, and it sort of came out of nowhere for me. I didn't know when it was added. So maybe they just started commenting more, but try to make it aware to all consultants. This is a requirement. Again, if you've got a ditch, you're filling on it, we need to undercut it, unless being told otherwise by your geotech on the project. And you can see in here, it's recommending a 2-foot undercut. And we're recommending just to do an approximate 4-foot width on that. Again, your geotech could tell you wider or narrower depending on the ditch geometry. And also OGE wants this just handled as 203 excavation, 203 embankment. If they're pulling out crappy material with excavation, the contractor would have to waste it based on CMS specs. And then when they backfill it, it has to be good material. Your geotech on the project could tell you they want you to just handle it as, say, excavation of subgrade or some other pay item. and then backfill maybe even with a different pay item as well. So right now, the base is going to be 4 foot by 2 foot, handle it with 203, but check with your geotech on the project to make sure all that fits for you. So here's just a quick picture of when I was running through and sampling. You can see on the left side there, we're filling on top of a ditch. We went through and modeled a generic 4 foot by 2 foot undercut. And then the bottom picture is showing the delineation of the earthwork. And the blue line on the bottom left there is the fill. So you can see it's filling that undercut back in. It's a little hard to tell, but there's also a volume for cut there as well for that ditch undercut. And when we go through and do the QA/QC on the video, we'll see that a little clearer. So again, with quantifying this as 203, initially when I ran through this practice, I was using the unsuitable feature definition, just like we would for unsuitable subgrade or existing pavement to be removed. But the problem with that I mentioned earlier, ORD doesn't automatically annotate unsuitable. I want this to come in as cut and fill, not unsuitable. So I used the cut volume feature definition that I said earlier you never use, because that's just the cut volume that gets created by the process. And I'll talk through why we did that a little bit more as we get into it. So just a real quick overview, just like the existing pavement and the earthwork we went through a second ago, we're going to throw all your files in there. We're going to model that undercut. And again, I'm mentioning there in the middle, use the volume cut feature definition. And we'll go into that a little more. I also mentioned before, those cut volume meshes come in as a construction element. If you want these to plot in your cross sections, you need to select the volume it's going to create when you model it and set it to a primary feature class. And then it also comes in with 30% transparency. If you want it to plot solid, you could change that to 0. This example was just with our existing workspace. As this advances, I don't know, Matt, we could maybe create another cut feature definition to handle that automatically for you. But in this video, that's what we've got right now. So again, just having to switch that to primary, otherwise it won't plot, and then change your transparency if you feel like it. Again, 4 foot by 2 foot is what we're doing generically, and 203 for the work items. After we model that undercut, we're going to throw it into an earthwork drawing. We're then going to go through, do our QA/QC and all that stuff like we did before. And just like the volume levels come in on construction element class, they also come in as a no plot element. So our workspace sort of reinforces it's a construction element and it doesn't plot. So you have to say it's a primary element and I want to plot it. So we'll also talk about going into your level manager in your cross-section file to make sure that plots. And then I also mentioned at the bottom there and on the right side, those are all of the built-in text favorites for all of our annotation. You can see that all that's there right now is just cut and fill. There's nothing in there for unsuitable within the code for Bentley or open roads right now. So in the future, if that gets added in, we'll work on expanding that with our annotation groups. So we'll jump into another video here. So this video is going to go through modeling that ditch undercut, doing the volume, checking it, and then annotating it. So this is all one long video. So hopefully we'll jump through here and keep on time pretty well. I'm already running a little long here, I think. So again, just going over why we're doing this. And I will jump ahead in this video just to try to save us a little time here. So in this one, again, there's multiple techniques of how to model something like this. On this one, I did a very generic ditch center line. So I have my existing contours set to 1 foot major to get that as apparent as possible. I'm just doing a scratch alignment to get the center line of that ditch. And once I get that created, I'm going to offset it 2 feet left and right using the ORD geometry tools. So 2 foot with a mirror. I then close in the end of those with a complex by PVI, or I'm sorry, complex by PI, ORD geometry element. So all I'm doing here is creating a boundary. I'm going to set all of them set all of their profiles active so that they get a 3D element. I'm going to use that to create a proposed or a terrain with a break line in the middle. So as I jump ahead here a little bit, so I'm opening all of those profile views. I'm setting the existing ground active for all of them. Again, just to get those 3D elements out of it, and I'm going to create a terrain. And you're all welcome to watch this video again in your spare time. I screwed something up in the video, didn't feel like redoing the video, so I made it a learning moment. So if you want to see what I did wrong and how to fix it, you can watch that whole video. But basically, as we get back in here, you can see I've got in the 3D view now, I'm going to create that terrain. So you can see all the elements in the 3D view, so we know they all have a profile. I'm going to grab a boundary to create that terrain. And then I also assigned the center line of that ditch to be a break line. And I brought in the display of that. I switched the feature definition to triangles just so you can see it is following those contours appropriately. So again, we've got the boundary and then that break line in the middle for that V ditch. So we've now got a surface just for the ditch undercut work. We're going to go in and create a very simple constrained component in the template dialog here. And again, I am setting the feature definition of that element to volume cut. This typically wouldn't be done, but I want ORD to annotate it all together for me. I don't want to have to manually do it in a sub-summary or something else. So that's why we chose to go with that here. I didn't go over in this video how to create that simple component. Again, we've got tons of videos to go over how to do that. Important things here though, volume cut feature definition. And I think I jump ahead here in a second. Then I'm just showing that this is 2 feet deep. So just like when we model existing pavement, we're going to assign this to a terrain. It's going to drape on that surface. The width of this doesn't matter. It's all arbitrary. The slope doesn't matter. It's just the depth is what's going to matter and the feature definition. So once we've got that surface or we've got that terrain for the ditch work, we're going to apply the template. And when this dialog pops up, one thing I want to sort of mention here. So when that dialog pops up, and this is just another little glitch I've noticed recently, if you have assigned a template to a couple different linear templates or corridors or whatever, you then go into your template manager, modify it, and then come back out to reapply it to some new template drop. At least for me, I don't know if anyone else has seen this. If you open this list of templates, if you leave it as the one that was already selected, it's not grabbing the current template. If you click off of the template and click back onto it, it'll grab the current one. And the only reason I noticed this during testing was I originally had this undercut set as an unsuitable, which shows up as like a brownish yellow in the template manager. I opened this up and I had changed it to unsuitable, but it was still green. So I knew it wasn't grabbing the current template. So it's just a glitch I've noticed. However, if you, again, just click off of the active template it selects when you first launch this and pick it again, it grabs the current one. So I don't think we've had any support tickets or anything on that. Maybe people just haven't noticed it. I don't know if anyone in the audience has seen that before, but just something to be aware of. Again, if you're modifying templates in between applications of it in your model, make sure it's grabbing the current one. So just a little glitch there with the way it's, I don't know if it's a display issue or what it is with that template option, but so once we pick that, assign it to our template, you can see down in the cross-section view, back up here a second. Once we assign that, you can see it showed up in the cross-section view, that 4 foot wide, 2 foot deep undercut, and it is draping along the terrain like we would expect. If we jump ahead here just a little bit, so what I did was in the 3D view, I grabbed the actual 3D element that it's creating, not the surface template. Grab that, go over to the properties, and again, I'm going to switch this from construction class to primary class. With ditch undercuts becoming more common in projects, again, we might modify the workspace to automatically do this, so assign a feature definition for it. For this video, I didn't want to have to get into workspace mods as well. So this very well could change in the near future, but just setting that to primary and no transparency. So it's going to plot just like all of our other proposed work items in the cross sections. And if we jump ahead a little bit here, so this is the other thing I wanted to touch on. So usually when you do the cut volume feature definition, the volume option is ignored. And we're going to see that here in a second. I'm going down into our mesh feature definitions. I picked that volume cut. And when I open up the properties window here in a second, so you can see on the left side there, the volume option is cut. When I ran this originally just using this feature definition, when Open Roads was delineating cut and fill volumes for me, it was not handling it correctly because it was already seeing this as a cut. What I discovered I needed to do, and I get into it here in the video. So again, this is probably a reason that we want to modify the workspace a little bit to create a new feature definition. I ended up having to override the volume option on this specific element in the drawing, not the feature definition in the drawing, to dictate it to be unsuitable. So you can see here as I jumped ahead a little bit, I switched that from a cut volume option to an unsuitable volume option. So I'm going to set this up to be treated like it's pavement removed or some other unsuitable, but keeping it on the feature definition of volume cut is going to allow Open Roads to quantify it for me. So I'm hoping I didn't lose anyone on that, so I'll go over it one more time just to reinforce it. I want Open Roads to annotate the cut and fill for this work automatically for me. I don't want to have to piece it together downstream when doing a sub-summary or something else. So I want the feature definition set to volume cut, just like the earthwork volumes that are going to get created. But those are on the cut volume option, which was not then delineating properly as a proposed work type when I went through and ran the volumes. So I want the software to know this ditch undercut that I've modeled in here, it is unsuitable material. It needs to be removed and it needs to get backfilled, but I want it to quantify it as cut work, not unsuitable work. So hopefully that makes sense. So went down into those feature definition settings and eventually have these, you can see I'm going through and setting I switched the split from false to true. So just like the unsuitable pavement, the one is set to unsuitable remove only, the other is unsuitable remove and replace. So the video obviously is here. If anybody else needs to do this, we may roll out some workspace changes to do this a little bit more directly or more user-friendly for end users. But this was just to get the video to work and get those areas to delineate correctly. So all I'm doing here, I grabbed the unsuitable feature definition that we would use for pavement removed, and I'm just showing that the settings are exactly the same. So it gets handled by the earthwork volume operation the same. But again, the key is we want it to be on that cut volume. So once we get that in there, we're then going to run through and create earthwork volumes like we did before. So all I did was created a new earthwork base map, referenced in all of my models like before, including my ditch undercut model. I ran through the earthwork volume routine again, and now I'm going to go through and do a QA QC. So again, you can see in that screen grab right now, the proposed ditch is creating a cut fill or a cut volume. The area between the existing ground and the proposed grading is a fill. So these were old volumes before I brought the ditch undercut in. I'm going to rerun the earthwork routine. And we mentioned it a little bit ago in the earthwork presentation. It's going to ask you if you want to delete the old ones. Make sure you hit yes, otherwise you'll get duplicate. And once this goes through, if you watch the bottom cross section, you will see that blue fill line is going to go down to the bottom of that ditch. So that is now seeing it as an excavation and then backfilling that ditch for you. So the fill volume gets handled much nicer than the cut, where it all does it as one volume. Because I set the cut up as essentially an unsuitable element, it went through and created a cut volume, a cut remove volume, and a cut remove replace volume, just like existing pavement. So to show that, so if we jump ahead here, isolate everything but the cut volume level, you can see there are 3 elements in this drawing. There's the overall cut volume, there's a cut remove and replace, and there's a cut remove. Again, this is because the software is handling it like an unsuitable feature definition, but all 3 of these volumes are on the cut volume level, which is what the annotation is going to read. So if we jump ahead a little bit here, just to try to stay on target, I think I'm a little doing okay. But here in the cross-section navigator, I zoom in a little bit. Again, you can see the fill volume is delineating as we would expect. The cut volume, though, if I toggle through all the elements here, so if I right-click to cycle through those, eventually I'm going to get to a sliced area. So you can see here, it's on the volume cut volume level, and it's showing up as a remove and replace item. So again, what that's doing, it's cutting it out, and then it's putting it back with fill. So we showed that that was working okay. So now what I'm going to do is, like we talked about a second ago, in addition to making sure your volumes delineate correctly, you want to make sure that they're tabulating correctly also. So I'm going to jump into a cross section after I reference all of that undercut and earthwork in. So what I do in this sample, so after we assign all of those earthwork volumes to our name boundaries, I'm going to go in here and delineate some very, very quick areas. So basically what I'm doing is I'm tracing what I think the cut should be on this section just to spot check it. So I went through and I traced the ditch undercut. I traced that little bit of widening we've got on the one side, a little bit of widening we've got on the other side, and we're going to end up with 3 different areas here. And when I grab those and then check the total area on those 3, so you can see that we're getting, zoom in, we're getting 13 square feet. And then we're going to go over to where that annotated, and we're going to show that that is grabbing and computing all of those correctly. So that is the end of that video. So are there any, before I move on to the ideas and stuff, how much did I lose anyone on the undercut and all the feature definitions? Did that make sense? Again, we'll probably talk within the group about if we need to keep doing these models for undercut, it's probably worth doing a defined feature definition so that end users don't have to go through and tweak all those settings. This is at least a way to do it right now. Are there any questions on that process? I think there's one back. Dave, if you could run the mic back. If you could run the mic back. Thanks.
While Dave's getting there, Brian from OGE had a note in January, the January update, they're going to revise the guidance for this undercut to only be if you're building new pavement over a ditch, not simply embankment. So
okay,
should be lessened.
Yeah.
The amount that's needed.
Yeah, so the one thing I didn't really touch on during the presentation, but I do cover in the video, obviously at the beginning of this, when you start modeling your undercut, you need to go through and find all of those areas where you're burying the ditch to begin with. So it sounds like in the future, it's just going to be pavement on existing ditch, whereas right now, I've gone through projects in the past and I'm finding anywhere we're doing any proposed work on top. So you would have to go through your project, find all those areas and model it appropriately. So it would be good to see that change in January. Then I'll make it a little easier. Yeah, question in the back?
Yeah, so I think what we've done in the past is just made 2 shapes, 1 cut, 1 fill for that ditch. So it's all there's just 2 shapes there instead of 1. And then
so your template had 2 shapes, you mean?
We would just make 2 separate components. So we do the 3D element tool. So then there's a cut element, and there's a fill element. And then if you just reference all of those into your cross sections, it counts those
Okay.
in your report.
So so you're modeling it twice essentially.
Yeah.
But
Maybe it's not the best way, but
well, I mean that's still, you create one template, you do a save as, you change the feature definition, you apply it twice, right? So it's still pretty quick. So it's another workflow. I think that
I was going to say, if you do a second constrained component with a different feature definition on top of it, it would do the same thing.
So when I was testing this, I originally tried to have two overlapping components in the same template, and it was not working correctly. So I think you would have to do it as two independent. So I don't know why it wouldn't function properly, because I tried to do a cut box and a fill box in the same template drawing, and it wouldn't delineate correctly. So then I came up with this, and again, this is a suggested workflow. It's not the only way to do it. There's always multiple ways.
I wonder if you just moved it a 10th or 100th off, away from each other. That might do the trick.
So yeah, I guess the real takeaway is try to set it up in a way that it will automatically annotate for you, so you're not having to then put stuff together downstream. So
yeah, but the anything with the cut or fill feature definition, when it's referenced into that name boundary, it'll read it in the name boundary report. That's what we found. Okay. Yeah, so even if you have like 3 files.
Great.
So that's what we've done in the past.
Okay, yeah, it's a good workflow too.
Did you look at all closed meshes for this workflow?
Yeah, that's what we use, is closed mesh.
So the only reason so just like the existing pavement, any of those approaches would work for how to model it. Whether you do the closed mesh, you do the clip terrain and a surface template, or you do this approach,
right? All
of them would work the same. It's really just which feature definition you put onto it.
Right.
So having these videos back to back, I wanted to go through one approach for the existing pavement and then a different approach for the ditch. But however you want to model it, it's really just the feature definition that mattered.
Right.
Any other questions online?
No.
Anybody else in the audience? Okay. So at the end here, hopefully one of the guys can drop these links into the chat. So these again are all idea portal links that honestly, these have been here for, I think, well over a year. I looked back through a couple of Matt's old Earthwork videos and he had all these in there then. So you may have voted for these already, but if everybody can grab all these links to try to vote for these to get them upgraded. So the first one is basically, right now, Open Roads has no support for seating in the cross sections. So sort of just like unsuitable, there's no way to do a nice workflow on how to do that. We've got a couple workarounds. So there is a idea in there for getting that into Open Roads. The end area corrections for curvature, I mentioned again, we've got guidance on that in volume 3, but there's no way to do that in Open Roads just yet. So that's an idea we'd like to get pushed up.
That was another one to match Geopack functionality that existed before.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We could do seating and curvature in Geopack, and then Open Roads lost that functionality. The delete specific annotation group. So again, if you create your cross sections before your earthwork and you want to pull annotation out so you can re-annotate, you have to pull everything out right now. It'd be nice to be able to pull out. You can do it by section right now, but it's still everything or nothing when you pull that out. So it'd be great to be able to do specific ones, as well as adding annotation over a specific station range. Right now, it's either a single station or all in the model. So it'd be nice to be able to do a specific range if you know that changed. Placing name boundaries. So right now, we have, when you create your name boundary for your cross sections, there's a buffer on the top and bottom. When it creates that name boundary height, it automatically does that buffer. It doesn't round to the nearest 5 or 10 foot grid. It'd be nice to be able to get that just for some plan cleanliness. And then, Adam, like you mentioned, splitting cross sections if they're wider than your standard name boundary. So have that automatically do those match lines. So those are all the cross section related ones. I threw an extra one in. We had a semi-recent. I think it was a CAD support request. It might have just been an internal ODOT conversation, but you can see on the left side, SAG curves right now. If the curve is not restricted for stopping sight distance, it labels it as, I'm assuming the intention there is infinite. Our manual showed as stopping sight distance not restricted. So we wanted to change that annotation to come in and change that. However, the infinite label is hard coded into open road. So no one downstream, but Bentley can change that. So we've put the idea out there to be able to give end users options to change that if they want. Again, that's literally just, it doesn't change the constructability or anything on it. It's just to make it match what we have in there for our volume 3 labeling guidelines. And let's see here, we've got some other ideas. You guys want me just to run through these, or?
Those, I mean, you can still edit the text once it's placed for the stopping sight distance. That's just to automate it.
All to override the field, you mean?
Yeah, you can just edit that. The other one with the top grid on the cross sections, I have a workflow. If you really hate that like I do, I came up with a workflow that will force it to go. If you create a profile or a terrain at the top, you kind of got to go in and figure out what the top is, but it'll kind of force it to go and draw that top grid at whatever interval you want. It's a little bit iterative process, but I kind of liked it on the project that I worked on. I thought it looked a lot cleaner, but
Good. So some other ideas we've had in here. So I'm not sure I've seen these yet, so I'll just read through them. You're volunteering?
Yep.
Okay.
I'll jump in.
So add unit formatting option to the report tables. Plan profile sheet creation. So I guess what's the first one?
So the first one is mainly for drainage. When we place those tables, I can't control the formatting the way I want to, or we all would want it to. So go vote for that one.
Okay. Yeah, and then plan profile, that's pretty self-explanatory. Right now we can do a plan only, a profile only, or a plan profile. Then again, ODOT or ORD seating reports. So there's a little duplication with the other. I think that's the same idea number at least. So you can click both of them, but it only let you vote once, unfortunately. You can't spam them every day. Name boundary enhancements, I guess.
They
general
basically combined a lot of the ideas for our name boundaries into one. I would assume most of us have already voted for this, but
and then
why not try again?
Again, to delete specific annotation groups, we talked about that one. Again, that's the same idea number.
On that one, I have some stuff on our knowledge base page or our wiki page using a batch process to kind of go through. For example, if you want to remove all your right-of-way annotation, there are some ways to go around it without removing everything. So if you want to remove your right-of-way annotations and relabel them because your proposed right-of-way changed, or your guardrail moved, for example, so you only want to remove the guardrail annotation and re-annotate the guardrail. There's ways to do it without that, but it would be nice to be able to just do the specific annotation groups without going through that workflow.
It's one I'm really surprised that Bentley hasn't done yet, to be honest.
Yeah, it seems like easy. There is someone from the consultant community has a VBA or some sort of macro that they've posted in the Bentley communities that you can find. I don't think we're willing to throw that in our workspace, but if you want to go get it, you can probably make it work.
Well, why would Bentley fix it if other people are going to come up with workarounds for it?
Right.
It was way down on the to-do list of updating that to work the way we'd want it to work, but I'd rather just Bentley do it.
Let's see here. So don't have two different name boundary dialogues.
This is by a complaint page. So You guys probably heard me say this before, so I just take this idea out there again. There are two different name boundary dialogues, one from MicroStation, one from ORD, and you can still get to both of them in ORD. And I was told that was works as designed, and I think that's ridiculous. Because then when you get the wrong one, you're like, what the heck's going on? So go vote for that.
Next one, import shapefile to honor the dgnlib.
This one was another one they told me works as designed. So everywhere else in the software, if you have things configured like text styles, dimension styles, they show up, right? Not when you import a shapefile, only things in that file. So you have to go and copy like your element template into the file for it to show up, even though you have it configured. And that was works as designed as well. So I don't agree with that.
So place label tool, place text favorites directly and honor dimension style notes and settings.
That one's a MicroStation one, right? Bring the place label, bring the MicroStation tool, let it so you can place a text favorite.
And we've got place label, fix no leader sequence.
Another one of my complaints. If anyone's tried to use place label with no leader, it doesn't work. And they told me to submit an idea. So there's my idea.
Place label work for referenced elements.
That's an enhancement. It only works for elements in the file, not references. It would be extremely awesome if you could use that tool on referenced elements.
Yeah, so I guess if everybody can go through all the links in the chat for those and vote for them if you haven't before, or if there's any other suggestions or you've created an idea, I'd say share it back to us so we can try to get more votes.
Yep, and the more, it's not just about vote count, it's about number of organizations. So if I just get over from OhioDOT to do it, it doesn't weigh as much as getting 50 different companies voting for the same thing. There have been a lot of ideas that did get implemented. So
okay, I think that's it.
Yep. All right. Almost a little early for once. Normally we're always going over, so it's good news. Okay, so I will try to get this posted here in the next couple of days. We'll post the PowerPoint. We'll post the recording. We'll spam you with all these links again. Because if you didn't vote, I need you guys to vote, right? With that, are there any more questions from anyone? Got one, Giovanni. So the question was, can we talk about anything with OpenBridge Workspace? I'll let Matt take that one.
I can. Do you really want to know? I'm kidding. So the long story is we started that several years ago and we threw it out there as like a beta workspace, and then it kind of got shelved. We just didn't have time to work on it and it wasn't a priority. So, and we didn't really have staff to kind of finish it. So about a year ago, earlier I mentioned we had a task order coming up on this programmatic. About a year ago, we had put a task order out to help with that. And JMT is working with us right now. And that is one of the tasks they're helping finish up, that and helping us with the drainage and utility analytics and ORD. So they're reviewing and checking to make sure that, well, I'll back up a second. They're reviewing the workspace side that we had started to make sure it's functional and, ready to be released for everybody to use. And then Bentley had also created the generative components for the 4 abutment types that we have in our standard drawings. And then, so JMT is confirming that those work and are functional for our use. We had already kind of went through and did that previously. They were started as generative components, and since then, I'm going to say this wrong, and don't hold me to it. Exactly what I'm going to say. I don't quite understand or remember the reasoning, but they've migrated to a generic component package file. So the GC files are being moved to the generic component package files, which includes some rework of those things. And we have a different person at Bentley that's working on it. So in some cases, they sort of started over on how those were kind of written or scripted. So 3 of the 4 are done. We're almost done. And actually, I think this week or next week, we're kind of restarting another blueprint to do that. So that project is a year-long task order, and that's supposed to be done at the end of the year, beginning of January sometime. So we're hopeful to have something released by the end of that project. And then if we don't, it'll roll into that second task order and we will get something done. Does that help? Yeah. We're working on it. It is, yeah.
All right. Yep. Oh no, go ahead and do that, right?
We'll vote for yours if you send them to us too. Our account team actually lets us know every couple of weeks, like, hey, you guys had all these ideas you submitted and these got so many more votes this week than last week. So it's kind of neat so hopefully we'll see a jump. You got 30 more votes than last week, and they'll be like wondering why. And oh, we had a user group meeting. We told everyone to go vote for all these.
Okay, well, thank you for everyone coming out. I'll get this stuff posted. That'll conclude today's user group meeting. Thanks, everyone.